In the hustle and bustle of everyday life, among the same sleeping cities, Kim Dok-ja once again plunged into the endless chapters of his favorite novel, unaware that the line between fiction and reality was about to collapse. The illusion of a peaceful morning was shattered as the world trembled and a hand reached out from the heart of chaos, signaling the beginning of an unimaginable catastrophe. From the gaping heavens, the demon of the horizon fell, its fanged mouth greedily swallowing the debris of the universe and the cries of the dying. The earth writhed in agony, and the skies wept with fiery rain, heralding the coming of a new era of despair. And in the midst of this fiery whirlwind, in the midst of the groans of the dying and the ashes of hope, Yoo Jun-hyuk stood, turning his blade against the very abyss. A sudden roar broke the silence, foreshadowing the chaos and irreversible changes that were about to engulf the world. From the depths of the unknown, from the very darkness, slowly but inexorably rose the false king, the harbinger of a new era. The faces of the unsuspecting passengers were frozen in shock and disbelief as their familiar world began to crumble at the seams. But Kim Dok-ja, clutching the life-saving but now cursed phone in his hand, realized he had already seen this in his nightmares. The entire carriage froze in horror as a tangible nightmare, a living embodiment of ancient legends, appeared before them. This was more than just a localized disaster. The world outside was engulfed in flames, the sky pockmarked with falling stars and debris. Kim Dok-ja and young Shin Yo-sung, standing on the edge of the destroyed train car, could only helplessly watch the city's agony. Suddenly, a blinding flash pierced the air, signaling a new, more personal battle. With a furious cry, Kim Dok-ja fell upon the invisible enemy, his blow splitting the ground beneath his feet. The rising dust obscured the silhouette, but Kim Dok-ja already understood. This wasn't just a monster, it was someone familiar. His eyes burned with a mixture of recognition and desperate determination, a readiness to accept any challenge. And here they were, face to face, two reflections colliding in a deadly dance, one of which asked, "Who the hell are you?" In response, a subtle flicker of fear flashed in Kim Dok-ja's eyes, an awareness of the depth of this absurd collision. Every movement, every swing of the blade, was filled with frantic energy that tore apart space. He stood in the midst of a shattered landscape, a lone warrior whose path was now finally intertwined with the prophecy. Finally, he was able to allow himself that bitter smile, as if the end of the road was also the beginning. But before the journey could continue, he had to return to the origins, to the quiet whisper of the pages. Each line was a whole world in which he lost himself, experiencing now delight, now tense silence. And these worlds were so real that sometimes he himself felt himself part of their decline, part of their hope and sorrow. But suddenly the usual rhythm of reading was interrupted, and the words on a screen froze, signaling the end of the journey. His world was shaken, the last word had been spoken, the last page had been turned, leaving behind only emptiness and incredible shock. The noise of the carriage, the voices of the passengers, all of this dissolved into the background hum while he tried to comprehend the irreversibility of what had happened. As if from oblivion, he emerged into a reality where the end of the story meant more than just the ending of a book. His own name, Kim Dok-ja, carried a double meaning, both only son and reader. And every time someone tried to decipher it, the words stuck in their throat, for the true meaning was much deeper than those around them could imagine. This name was not just a set of letters, but a testament from my father, to be strong, resilient, able to survive alone. Loneliness, it was always with him, be it in a noisy office or in the vast expanses of a web novel. An ordinary guy, 28 years old, without any outstanding achievements, but with a whole world inside him. His only outlet, his only passion, was reading, immersing himself in other people's stories on the way home. But this evening was a harbinger of change, unlike all the previous ones, filled with a premonition of something grand. And, in his eyes, recently immersed in a fictional world, a reflection of a new, frightening reality was now frozen. Suddenly, his gaze caught something that pulled him out of his stupor, as if awakening him from a dream. It was Yu Sang-ah from the HR department, whose elegance always made her stand out from the crowd. But her appearance here was unexpected. A short dialogue, mundane questions, but every word hung in the air, filled with an unspoken premonition. Perhaps this chance meeting was the last glimpse of normal life before the world around them changed forever. The unexpected closeness of Yu Sang-ah caused a slight confusion, a barely perceptible tremor in Kim Dok-ji's soul. Her innocent question about her daily routine, meanwhile, concealed a whole world of admiration and attempts to get her attention. Yu Sang-ah, while explaining the disappearance of her bicycle, unwittingly revealed her hard-working nature, which amazed Kim Dok-ju. Kim Dok-ja, watching her, understood perfectly well why men went crazy over Yu Sang-ah, but he clearly separated their worlds, considering himself only an outside observer. He saw her diligence even on the road. Her world seemed bright and full of possibilities, while his own. Suddenly, Yu Sang-ah interrupted his thoughts by asking what had captured his attention so much. In response, Kim Dok-ja, with a rare open smile for him, showed the screen of his phone, ready to share his passion. Her broad erudition in literature amazed him, but his favorite author, Kim Dok-ji, was far from the accepted tastes. He knew that. This question made him tense a little, because he was about to lift the curtain on a secret part of his life. On the phone screen, the name of the only world that had ever belonged to him flickered. 3 Ways to Survive in a Destroyed World, a work with a single reader. This novella was his inviolable refuge, his only companion in the darkest times, when school days were full of humiliations. She stayed with him when the world around him laughed at his failure, consoling him within the walls of a remote university. And even in the dark days of his army service, on the damned front lines, the pages of this story served as an invisible shield for him. Working remotely at a branch of a large company seemed to be just a continuation of this endless series of unhappy memories that he would prefer to erase. The 31,149 chapters of the fantasy novel he read for over a decade were the author's life's work, and, for Kim Dokji, the whole world. And each of these views, each comment consisting of a single number, clearly hinted, this story was written for him alone. He tried to share this treasure, but the world did not understand, pushed him away, and now, at this moment, Yu Sang-ah gently brought him back from deep thought. Realizing the awkwardness of the situation, they quickly changed the subject, switching to counting the time spent in his company. The year flew by unnoticed, and remembering their naive first days, they couldn't help but smile, although the knowledge of the approaching end of the contract added a slight bitterness to the conversation. But at the very moment their smiles met, something huge and inevitable was already looming on the horizon, ready to engulf their former world. Kim Dok-jaa felt like a year had passed, and in that awkward silence, he tried to change the conversation by mentioning his shortcomings and skills that seemed like they should have been better. While Yu Sang-ah was trying to bring him back to the reality of work reports, his thoughts had already wandered far away, to the world of web novels, where he had always been just an unnoticed reader. Her slightly sweaty face betrayed her anxiety, because the future seemed uncertain, and he seemed to be living in his own imaginary world. Kim Dok-jaa, catching her eye, suddenly suggested something that might seem strange, to show her the app he was using. In his eyes, however, a spark of something deep flashed, as if behind his ordinariness there was hidden a whole world accessible only to him. He continued to reflect that if his life were not realism, if it could be something else, something like a fantasy, where every day would not be just a series of boring events, but something more, then perhaps he could become someone completely different, go beyond his role. Suddenly, the train shuddered, a powerful jolt shaking the entire carriage, disrupting the ordinary nature of their journey and their conversation. Kim Dok-jaa tried to calm Yoosaah down, although he himself could not understand the reason for such an abrupt stop and the growing chaos. His gaze slid to the side, but his thoughts continued their course, convincing him that even the most unusual application could not change his fate. In this scenario, where he was only a reader and not a hero, he was sure that he was destined to live a life meant for an observer. Yu Sang-ah, catching his words, thoughtfully repeated to herself, the life of a reader, and there was something deeply sad about it. She admitted that his words were intriguing, and Kim Dok-jaa only smiled slightly in response. Suddenly, Kim Dok-jh stated with mock seriousness that he was then living the life of an ivory tower, to which Yoosaah responded with slight bewilderment. She decided to follow his example, promising to be devoted to her own destiny, and Kim Dok-jha noted that at least it became a little calmer. But this fragile calm was immediately broken. Kim Dok-jha's phone vibrated, attracting his attention. A message? Who could have written to him at such a moment, disturbing the silence of his thoughts? His eyes widened as he realized that this was none other than the author of Ways to Survive, the world he was soon to encounter. After all, this very story, Ways to Survive, had just won the competition, and reality began to rapidly intertwine with fiction, changing his fate forever. And then, right in front of him, something emerged from the darkness, whose golden horns and the snow-white mane of the false king foreshadowed the coming trials, no longer from books, but terrifyingly real. Kim Dok-ja couldn't believe his eyes. Could this story, Ways to Survive, which he thought was just his secret, really have won? Thoughts about the modest reward for victory were interrupted by a sudden signal, a new message flickering on the phone screen next to Yu Sang-ah. With slight bewilderment, he opened the favorite section, where the most important, or as it turned out, the most ominous news was usually kept. The subway car seemed frozen in its usual routine, where everyone was immersed in their own world, oblivious to the approaching storm that was already on the threshold. A sudden jolt broke the calm, causing Yu Sang-ah and Kim Duk-ju to raise their heads, feeling only slight confusion. But soon the jolt turned into a roar. Sparks flew from under the cars, and a piercing scream tore through the air, foreshadowing horror. The carriage shook, passengers clung to each other in terror, and their desperate cries about terrorists only increased the chaos. And at that moment, through the distorted metal, a monstrous grin appeared, full of terrible teeth, as if the abyss itself had opened up. The roar and smoke enveloped the carriage, making it impossible to understand what exactly had befallen them in this confined space. Kim Dok-ja hugged Yu Sung-ah, trying to calm her and himself down. His words about not being serious sounded like an attempt to hold on to an elusive reality. But time was running out. The clock was relentlessly approaching 7 in the evening, the moment that would change everything. A flickering light was reflected in his eyes, and a terrible guess, like lightning, pierced his mind. The hour of monetization had come, the hour of transition. A red notice flashed above the carriage, and Kim Dok-ja, whose heart was constricted with premonition, desperately wanted to shout to everyone, "Run!" Yu Sang-ah looked at him with confusion, trying to understand the reason for his strange behavior and unspoken horror. A fire of realization and despair burned in his pupils, for only he knew what this sudden fatal turn meant. The space around him exploded with red light, energy permeating every cell, and reality began to dissolve. Sweat poured down his face, but he didn't look away, trying to piece together the fragments of sanity in this madness. A chilling voice announced, "Free service to the planetary system VB-12 has been terminated," and added, "The main scenario will now begin." Kim Dok-ja turned to the terrified passengers, his knowing gaze suggesting inevitability, but none of them yet understood the scale of the coming carnage. Kim Dok-jaa felt the world around him shrinking, the realization of a terrible truth threatening to swallow him whole. Suddenly, the subway train stopped, plunging the car into dense, frightening darkness, as if cutting it off from familiar reality. The passengers around him were rushing around in confusion, trying to find a rational explanation, but in Kim Dok-ja's mind only familiar lines from the novel floated up, foreshadowing the inevitable. "No, this can't be," he whispered desperately to himself, while one ominous word formed in his head, "Tuckaby?" The excitement grew. The passengers looked at each other in bewilderment, not understanding what was happening, when strange sounds filled the air. Kim Dok-ja's eyes widened, reflecting a chilling premonition of the inevitable end. In the center of the carriage, shrouded in a mysterious pink glow, an object materialized, and chaotic, incomprehensible text hovered above it, as if space itself were distorted. "What is this?" Yo Sang-a exclaimed, while Kim Dok-ja realized with horror that this was not a hallucination, but the embodiment of his most terrible book predictions. There, in the center of the carriage, hovered Biyo, a cute, fluffy creature with small horns. Its appearance left no doubt before them was a real Tokaebi. Kim Dok-ja's gaze froze. Every cell of his body screamed with horror, because he understood that this monster would bring them hell on earth. All the passengers' eyes were fixed on the creature hovering in the air, and a whisper of horror and incomprehension ran through the carriage. Biyo, rocking back and forth, let out a series of sharp, piercing sounds, like hysterical laughter, his voice alien and distorted. Some of the passengers suggested that it was augmented reality. Others called it disgusting, trying to somehow comprehend what was happening. But Kim Dok-jaa, the only one who knew the truth, said with chilling certainty, "This is definitely Dokaebi." Yu Sang-ah, trying to find some logic in the absurd situation, noticed that Tokaebi's sounds were somewhat reminiscent of Spanish, and even suggested trying to talk to him. The panic-stricken passenger muttered in terror, trying to squeeze some money out of Tokaebi, while Kim Dok-jha barely contained his despair. Tokebi suddenly spoke, his voice, though alien, taking on a clear intonation. "People, can you hear me well?" Then added, turning to the man, "Hey, what are you doing now?" One of the passengers, completely unaware of the seriousness of the moment, angrily demanded to be let go as he was late for an interview, mistaking what was happening for filming. Biyo chuckled. "Ah, the interview. I see. It seems we didn't do enough research on this issue, even though most people agreed to monetization at 7 in the evening." And while Takabe was trying to calm them down, promising to share important information, a desperate cry rang out from the crowd. "What difference does it make? Start the train already." The naive, childish question that came from the lips of Xiny Yusun broke the oppressive silence in which the entire carriage froze. But then the crowd exploded with screams and desperate pleas, each of which echoed in the deathly silence. In the chaos of voices, Yusung heard a stern, "Don't move," from Han Myung. Oh, but how could she remain calm when the world around her was crumbling? Above this hell, the sharp, irritated voice of Biyo was heard, cutting off their screams, "You are too noisy." And then his true form appeared in all its nightmarish beauty, and the cry of, "Shut up," pierced the air like lightning. Frozen in horror, people only had time to gasp out in shock, "What?" before reality turned bloody. Relentless streams of blood flooded the floor of the carriage, sapping the legs of those who were still holding on in the dead silence. Horror gripped the passengers as they watched fountains of scarlet liquid erupt from the abyss of the floor, engulfing their neighbors. Panic gripped the carriage, causing people to rush about in frantic fear, trying to get away from the source of the carnage, but where to run? Biyo's sinister grin filled the air, and his voice echoed throughout the carriage. This isn't a movie set. No, it was not a dream, not a nightmare from which one could wake up, but unbearable pain and fear grew stronger and stronger. And not a book, Biyo continued, and not the realities you lived in. Do you understand me? His words sounded like a death sentence. Kim Doke-ja realized a terrifying truth. It was all real, and the part of him that clung to the illusion began to crumble. The frightened faces of the passengers, who just a minute ago had been living an ordinary life, were distorted by the realization of the inevitable end. Biyo hovered in the air, laughing at their shock. You lived, breathed, enjoyed yourself without paying bills. You lived in a wonderful world. But his smile only foreshadowed pain. Those days are in the past, because nothing in this world is free. Passengers clung to each other, trying to find some support in this suddenly changed world full of chaos. Amidst the general horror, one question was raised, sharp and clear, addressed to Biyo. Are you asking for money? Hanmai. Oh, a handsome man with glasses, only clenched his fists tighter, anger visible in his eyes, but he was powerless. Yu sang. I recognized him as manager Han Myuo from the finance department, realizing that even such a person could not be a reliable support in the coming chaos. Manager Han Myung, without losing his composure, handed over money and a business card, trying to bribe the mysterious creature, offering him untold riches. But the mysterious BI7623 only mockingly asked about the value of human banknotes, before promising a reward for his release. Blinded by greed, Han Myung rejoiced, convinced that money was a universal key that opened any door. However, a flash of searing golden light instantly dispelled his illusions, causing Han Myung to cry out in pain and horror. The creature coldly retorted that the pathetic pieces of paper were powerless in a macrocosmic world, threatening cruel reprisals for any further resistance. BI7623, smilingly demonstrating his power, announced that useless talk would only make the situation worse, promising to show the true value of money. With lightning speed, BI7623 rushed past the terrified passengers, whose screams echoed throughout the carriage. There is blood everywhere, panic is growing, and then, as if out of nowhere, a certain channel BI7623 opens, attracting the attention of the mysterious constellations. Amidst the chaos and confusion, flickering blue screens appear before the shocked people, raising new questions and increasing their horror. Some of them stood frozen in stupor, while others, like Kim Nam Wong Crazy Demon, looked at the screens with a mad, anticipatory grin. Kim Dok-ja focused his gaze as he studied the information on his screen, his face serious and focused. His eyes, full of determination and anxiety, reflected the awareness of his impending fate and his readiness to meet it. A notification flashed on the screen, main scenario received, heralding the beginning of a new, unpredictable chapter. Beacon-Abai 7623, grinning, gave the passengers an ominous parting word. Well then, good luck. His eyes glowed a demonic red, and his wide grin revealed a row of sharp teeth. Please entertain us with a spectacular show. The next moment, the carriage shook with an explosion of purple energy, scattering the frightened passengers in different directions. Meanwhile, as if signaling the start of the action, bright logos flashed in the background, calling on viewers to become part of something bigger. The carriage was plunged into an anxious murmur. The passengers, among whom was Usana, instinctively sought an explanation for what was happening. Usana, with a trembling hand, dialed the police number, feeling panic rising in her throat. There was no help. Despair overtook her when the lines went down, but someone nearby, trying to keep their cool, urged Usana to calm down. Kim Dok-jaa, holding back his own shock, asked Yo-os a question on which perhaps everything depended, about the game she had developed, where the world had already been destroyed once. The words hung in the air, cold and irreversible. We are inside her, and reality, distorted by panic, began to take on frightening contours. Awareness slowly pierced Yu Sang-ah, tearing questions about the rules out of her stupor, but there was only one answer. There are rules, and they need to be learned. Time was running out. Understanding these invisible laws was the only chance for survival, and Kim Doke-jha looked at her with demanding seriousness. Amidst the chaos and whispers, lost in the crowd of frightened passengers, they tried to comprehend the unthinkable, and Yu Sang convulsively clenched her hands. Somewhere nearby, invisible but all-powerful, Bio extended his antennae, preparing to observe the beginning of a new, monstrous act. Blood froze on the floor, and everywhere, like terrible harbingers of the end, lay bodies, cast down from the living into lifeless flesh. One of the office workers, his eyes frozen in horror, sat trembling and soaked in blood, as if he had a premonition of his fate. And, in the distance, motionless like a statue of despair itself, the old woman prayed silently, seeking solace in the unknown. The improbability of what was happening warred with the irrefutability of what she had seen, and Yu Sang-ah understood that it was no longer possible to deny this madness. Cries of despair, "Open the doors, break them with a hammer," shook the carriage, but Kim Doke-jaa, despite the internal struggle, realized that the only thing left to do was accept. What must I do to survive in this new world? This question, imbued with deadly seriousness, echoed in Kim Dok-jaa's mind. Take a deep breath and stop making noise. Kim Dok-jaa's calm voice cut through the panic, trying to bring the remnants of his mind back into control. And then Lee Henson, with sudden determination, took the floor, declaring a national disaster and his intention to take control of the situation. A barrage of incredulous questions. "Who are you?" fell upon him, but Lee Henson only calmly presented his ID. Lee Henson stood before them, all weariness gone from his face, now the personification of order, showing off his ministry ID. At that very moment, an ominous message flashed on someone's phone screen: National Disaster Level 1, urgent assembly of all troops. And the last doubts were dispelled. Kim Dok-jaa looked at Lee Henson, hearing the passengers whisper, "Lieutenant? He's a soldier," realizing that there was more than just a civilian in the carriage. Lee Henson confirmed their suspicions, explaining that he had received a direct message from his unit indicating a state of emergency. Surrounded by panicked people demanding answers and contact with the president, Lee Henson only chuckled bitterly. His own attempt to contact the unit had been unsuccessful. Amidst chaos and hopelessness, Lee Henson acknowledges his limitations with a weary sigh, an ordinary soldier unable to solve problems of national proportions. But Kim Dok-jaa, lost in his own thoughts, feels a strange uneasiness. Why does the name of Lieutenant Lee Henson, so familiar to him, cause such a premonition? Seeing it in person for the first time, he feels how this name, seemingly from another reality, resonates deeply in his mind. Lee Hyenson, the steel sword of the Korean army, is a minor but crucial character in the novel that Kim Dok-jaa read to the end. This is not just a coincidence. Every word, every movement of Lee Henson exactly matches what Kim Dok-jaa remembered from the pages of Ways to Survive. But something is wrong here. Kim Dok-jaa's recollection of the hero's first appearance contradicts reality. After all, in the novel, Lee Henson was supposed to appear only after the completion of the first script, and not at this moment of bloody chaos. Desperate to reread the chapters of Ways to Survive for answers, Kim Dok-jaa hears a new wave of panic. The Prime Minister is making an emergency address. Uisa, Singh H., handing him her phone, says his name with a trembling voice as the official but frightening words. "To all citizens, come out of the speaker." Prime Minister Henmayeon appears on the screen, his face distorted with horror, and Kim Dok-jaa immediately understands. This is a speech about terrorism. It makes it easier to accept what is happening. Whispers and questions mount among the crowd. Why the Prime Minister and not the President? And then a terrifying rumor spread through the comments. The President was assassinated. Some call it internet nonsense, others call it an obvious lie, but Kim Dok-jaa knows it's not a lie, and things are about to get much worse. Suddenly, deafening shots ring out, breaking the silence of the carriage, and screams of horror pierce the air. The broadcast distorts, showing a horrific image. The Prime Minister is dead, His body slumped on a table, and the words, "You and noun terrorists," flash across the screen. The screen explodes with static, and static signals drown out any remaining hope. And, through the interference, a distorted voice breaks through, uttering the fateful words, "People, I already told you." But this is not the voice of the Prime Minister, but the eerie, inhuman roar of the fake king, who mockingly declares, "What is happening is not simple terrorism." His voice, full of contempt, pierces the consciousness. "You still don't understand? This won't do. Does this sound like a game? Okay, the citizens of this country are good at games." And here he is, the fake king, like the director of a cruel performance, offering to increase the difficulty of this deadly game. And at that very moment, an ominous blue timer flashes in the center of the carriage, counting down 24 minutes and 22 seconds until the next act of the nightmare. The terms of the horrific punishment were announced. Failure to commit the first murder within the next 5 minutes would mean the death of every living thing in the carriage. Panic is growing. Voices are mingling in a desperate chorus. What kind of madness is this? Where are the police, soldier? What should we do? In the chaos, one of the women instinctively grabs Kim Dokeju's sleeve, seeking comfort in his stoic calm as those around him continue to call out to him as a leader. But Kim Dokjaa, with a grim determination in his eyes, only confirms with his inner voice, "Everything is going according to plan, as I predicted." The appearance of Lee Henson, a minor character, confirms his suspicions, like the pages of a foretold story come to life. But for some reason, that guy, the key figure in his knowledge, has still not shown up, raising a slight shadow of doubt. According to his prophetic knowledge, Iu Jun Hyuk should have been here already, but his absence frightens Kim Do-Keju, as if it were disturbing the immutable order of the universe. And then a cry of horror breaks the silence. A murder has occurred in the neighboring car, and the blood streaming down the doors confirms the worst fears. The instinct for self-preservation pushes people towards the doors, trying to block them, but an invisible force repels them with electric discharges. A man desperately trying to prevent an intrusion falls, struck by an electric shock. And at that very moment, an invisible barrier appears in front of the door, a transparent barrier, incomprehensible to an ordinary person. Like a voice from above, it is announced that until the scenario is completed, access to the carriage will be restricted, blocking their escape. Meanwhile, somewhere in another dimension, Kanul, with a predatory glint in his eyes, watches this deadly performance live, savoring the anticipation of the events to come. "Well, let me do you a small favor," he grins, preparing to show the helpless passengers what will happen if they don't hurry up with the first kill. And before the shocked eyes of the passengers in the carriage, a terrifying projection materializes, a school classroom filled with laughing children. One of the passengers, a man wearing glasses, exhales in shock, not understanding what kind of horror he is about to see. Isn't this the uniform of Taifeng Girls' High School? The thought that pierced his mind only intensified the growing horror. Innocent laughter gives way to heart-rending screams as an invisible punishment falls upon the children, tearing them to shreds before the eyes of helpless onlookers. The toll collection begins. An ominous voice announces the start of the toll, and Kim Dokjaa, gritting his teeth, feels sweat trickle down his forehead. A cry of "Help! Open the doors!" echoes through the carriage as the last image fades, leaving behind only the echo of the nightmare and the knowledge of imminent danger. But instead of salvation, only a new wave of horror appeared, distorting reality beyond recognition. A shrill, piercing scream tore through the air, echoing in the souls of those who still retained their sanity. Panic was evident in their eyes as the familiar world collapsed and the unfamiliar "it" appeared in all its monstrosity. The question, "What's going on?" froze on my lips, and my consciousness refused to accept the new, grotesque reality. Even Kim Dokjaa seemed prepared for this, but the distortion of space around him spoke of something much deeper than mere chaos. And as the world around us disintegrated into pixels, new scenes of violence and struggle emerged through the digital ripples, presenting a picture of madness. Fear paralyzed his movements, forcing him to freeze in silent horror in the face of an inexplicable threat. Kim Dokjaa, with drops of blood on his face, continued to watch, his gaze clinging to every detail in this distorted world. Meanwhile, somewhere in a school classroom, amidst the digital chaos, Leejai seemed to be the embodiment of composure and defiance. And the voice belonging to the invisible monster broke the silence again, asking with devilish pleasure, "What do you say? Isn't this fun?" Every nerve tingled with tension, and the passengers' movements became more and more abrupt and desperate. A new holographic projection appeared in front of Kim Dokjaa, and a silent cry of, "Damn, what is this? What the fuck?" froze on his lips. reflecting everyone's bewilderment. They didn't know where to run, and every instinct told them only one thing: danger was close, and it was inexplicable. The distorted image on the screen only heightened the sense of doom, and the blood on the floor was a reminder of the inevitable casualties. Cold sweat trickled down their temples, becoming a physical manifestation of the inner horror that gripped everyone. Lost and scared, they tried to find some meaning in what was happening, but were only met with silence and chaos. King Dokjaa, gritting his teeth, realized that although what was happening seemed familiar, there was something deeply strange about it and did not correspond to his knowledge. He feverishly went through the events of the novella in his memory, realizing that many of them were already happening, but inexplicable discrepancies sowed doubts. And now, his last hope has been dashed. The electronic copy of the novella, his only guide to survival, has become unavailable, having disappeared from the internet forever. In that moment of realization, Kim Dokjaa's world turned upside down. He was alone, without guidance, face to face with an unknown horror. Kim Dokjaa stared at his phone screen in confusion. The world around him seemed frozen in anticipation. He rubbed his eyes, not believing what he saw, but the digital anomaly did not disappear, only increasing his confusion. Could an unknown author really have sent him an entire novel as a gift, especially at such a time? The question of ethics paled in comparison to the absurdity of what was happening. And then, system messages flashed before his eyes. You have received a special attribute. A unique skill slot has been activated. The world of the novel was no longer just text. The flow of information, reminiscent of a game interface, made him realize this is not a metaphor, this is a harsh new reality. Thoughts of the characteristics window raced through his mind, as it should have contained answers about his new capabilities. But when he tried to activate it, only upside-down writing and a question mark met his gaze, adding to his confusion. The system ruthlessly rejected the request, declaring that it could not be activated. Its unique attributes remained hidden. Without this knowledge, he was blind, unable to understand what powers were now hidden within him, and despair began to creep in. Then he remembered the source itself, the original file of the novella, the last thread to understanding this madness. A strange blue light flashed in his eyes as he tried to read the world through the prism of his new ability. The information came pouring out, the condensed data of the novella compressed into moments, and a realization struck him. This was the effect of his attribute. As if foreseeing the future, he saw the smallest details hidden from ordinary sight and realized that he had found the key. His gaze darted to the window, where the carriage number was visible, 3807. There it was, the discrepancy, the beginning of all his worries. He stood in the carriage, realizing that number 387 was not an accident, but a critical point, the source of his anxiety. The real reason for the divergence from the novella became clear. His carriage was not where the main events unfolded, but somewhere behind the protagonist, in another dimension of horror. Next to him, Yu Sang-ah looked at him with concern, realizing that things were happening in car 3807 that he knew about. Shouldn't we stop them, Dokjaa? Her voice was desperate as he looked out the blurry window. Kim Dokjaa just clenched his fists. It was already too late. The passengers of car 3807 could not escape their fate. There was only a muffled groan as someone's hand clutched at the fabric in desperation, plunging into chaos where only Kim Nam-un, whose eyes were already burning with madness, did not want to listen to the pleas for salvation, drowning them out with his powerful, dangerous voice. One sharp, merciless swing, and blood stained the floor, becoming the first harbinger of the inevitable massacre. There was more than just rage in his gaze, but a deep-seated obsession that brooked no dissent. Next to Kim Dokjaa, Iusas stood frozen in horror. Her fate seemed sealed, and her heart sank with fear. Another man was captured like a puppet, his resistance futile in the face of this chaotic force. Manager Han Ma-young, trying to maintain some order, rushed forward, but his words about age sounded naive in the new, bloody reality. Kim Dokjaa and Yoo Sang-H were horrified to recognize him as their boss, whose usual behavior was in stark contrast to the current madness. But Kim NN only met his gaze, full of the same bloodlust that had already engulfed this world. He taunted Han Ma-young by talking about death while other passengers were already lying on the floor, overcome with panic. The manager, trying to get his point across, pointed to the glowing holograms, but his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Cries of horror and despair echoed around them. People were falling, and a merciless voice proclaimed the end of the old rules. Kindness and pleas for mercy lost all meaning when a voice from the shadows called for silence and death. Like an evil demiurge, Kim Nam-un towered over the victims, dictating a new, monstrous reality, the choice of whom to kill. Han Ma-young-oh staggered and denied this madness, calling it bestial, but his words sounded like the last echoes of a bygone era. Kim Doke, JAA, realized that old moral standards were meaningless as the world around him crumbled, and despair was reflected in his eyes. Kim Ne, Moon, like the embodiment of chaos, with a devilish grin proclaimed the end of the familiar world. Cracks were spreading across reality, and the new world, cruel and merciless, dictated its own rules of survival. Kim Nam-un, who was the quickest to accept the new conditions, unhesitatingly struck down all who stood in his way. It was he who drove the first wedge into the crack of human morality, awakening in others their darkest instincts. With each blow, he destroyed the last barriers, turning passengers into beasts ready to do anything to save themselves. The blows rained down one after another, mercilessly falling upon those who dared to oppose the beast in human form. Bloody chaos reigned all around. Animal horror was frozen in people's eyes, and each new blow only increased hopelessness. In those moments, watching the carnage, Kim Dok-ja recalled one particular paragraph from a novel he had once read. He thought of the executioners pulling the lever at the same time, so that no one could tell whose hand had actually ended the life. No one wanted to take full responsibility for what they had done, looking away from the truth, which was now embodied in the person of Lee Henson. And so, standing there, Kim Dok-ja felt like an outside observer, as if he were rereading that very paragraph, only in real life. He looked at the scene from another world, indifferently but attentively, simply observing this whole bloody spectacle. But this invisible barrier between him and reality suddenly cracked under a cry of despair. Is it really only because of this? It was Yu Sang-ah who rushed forward, shouting, "If this continues, she'll die." Kim Dok-ja intercepted her, sternly telling her that she couldn't act recklessly, that in this madness she herself would die. Their eyes met, hers filled with fear but also unwavering determination as he softly said her name, Yu San-ah. She still shone as brightly as before, her pure soul refusing to accept the violence that had engulfed the carriage. However, Kim Deok-ja understood that the person who could change this story was not Yu Sang-ah, because she was not the protagonist of this world. Yu San-aishi, stay here, he said with increasing firmness. Please listen to me just once. He promised that after that he would not interfere anymore, leading her with a heavy heart but with a firm determination. To be honest, it's too early for me to intervene, Kim Dok-ja thought, but I have no choice. Yu San-ah looked at him, asking why he was doing nothing, but Kim Deok-ja wasn't afraid of Mad Demon, Kim Nam-woong, or the others, and not because he agreed with their inhumane methods. He simply waited, waiting for the opportune moment when his intervention would have the greatest effect, when the chaos would reach its peak. And just when hope seemed to have faded, the carriage exploded in a blinding flash of power, marking his entrance onto the stage. Kim Dok-ja knew the time had come, and he gave the signal. The subway car shook from the blast wave, throwing bodies into the air like dolls. A deafening roar and streams of flame engulfed the space, terrifying those who remained. The chaos grew, each blow shaking the carriage to its foundations, destroying the last vestiges of order. Kim Do-jae's surprise attack caught Kim Nam-woong, the crazy demon, off guard, interrupting his bloody harvest. A powerful, decisive blow hit the target, throwing the enemy back. What the bastard? Rage and bewilderment mixed on the face of the mad demon when he realized what had happened. The light from the source carriage flickered, foreshadowing new changes and the appearance of something significant. What the hell just happened? He roared, trying to comprehend the inexplicable thing that had destroyed his dominance. Meanwhile, Kim Dok-ja, ignoring the battle raging around him, frantically searched for something with his eyes, knowing that it was somewhere nearby, hidden in the smoke. A sudden flash of understanding lit up his eyes, pointing to his target. He found his target, a frightened Shin Yo-shung, clutching something valuable tightly to himself. With a decisive but quick movement, he grabbed the boy by the shoulder, getting his attention. "Excuse me, could you borrow this for a second?" His calm but demanding voice rang out amid the chaos. Without delay, the item was handed over to him, as if according to a pre-orchestrated plan, completing an important stage. Kim Dok-ja stood up, addressing the frantic crowd. "Stop, you won't survive even if you kill this old woman." These words pierced the consciousness of those who still retained a semblance of reason, causing Lee Henson and Yu Sang-a to look at him in amazement. His gaze was focused, penetrating, radiating a strange calm in the midst of madness. "Suppose you kill her. What then? He continued, challenging their desperate, senseless plan. I agree, this might buy us time, since it will be recognized as the first death. But what will you do after that? His voice made many pause. Kim Dok Jha did not give them any peace. His words sowed fear. After all, if the words of the Tokaibi are true, then the first victim will be followed by a second and then a third. And at that moment, as if awakened from sleep, the insane, heart-rending laughter of Kim Nam Wong, the crazy demon, was heard. So what? Came the words into the silence, full of challenge and frantic courage. He raised his head, his eyes blazing with a wild fire. We'll just kill a coward like you. The chances are equal for everyone. Kim Dok Jaa just smiled, as if anticipating this outburst of despair and aggression, and said, I knew you would say that. There is no point in risking your life, continued Kim Dok Ha. There is a way to survive without being stained with blood. Have you forgotten? He asked, his words laced with ironclad logic. The script's condition is not killed a man. His hand slowly rose, revealing something small and inconspicuous. The transparent container he held contained dozens of the most ordinary grasshoppers. Beetles! Came the surprised and frightened cries. He's got insects, some shouted. If I get one of them, others whispered. The madness that a minute ago was directed at the unfortunate old woman was now looking for a new victim. And this victim, of course, was himself, who found himself in the center of a crowd of crazed people. But on his face, despite the danger, a wide, almost mad smile blossomed. Have I always been like this? Flashed through his thoughts as the shadows around him came to life, turning into monsters. Without thinking, he squeezed his hand sharply, crushing one of the beetles. Ha! He breathed, dodging the attack as chaos grew around him. The carriage filled with screams of horror as the grasshoppers, as if escaping from a nightmare, began to attack the passengers. Bind them! Came the desperate cries as Kim Doke Jaa stood to the side watching the madness. The countdown had begun, and the remaining time was melting away with every second, heralding new challenges. The countdown ticked relentlessly, and behind it lurked a question that echoed throughout the carriage. Kim Dok Jaa, surrounded by the haze and reflections of the fire, silently met the questioning gaze. Kim Nam, uncrazy demon, with a mocking half-smile, asked in bewilderment why the easy way was not chosen. His red eyes, glowing with madness, focused on the answer. Only 3 could survive. So she was just a pawn you sacrificed for the sake of the majority? Came a wild laugh, met with a cold yes. But the answer did not satisfy the second, and an atmosphere of mistrust and hidden motives hung in the air. The mad demon bowed his head, his smile twisting into something sinister. Admit it, you just wanted to watch the chaos, didn't you? Kim Dok Ja remained unperturbed, but deep within his mind, a unique skill was activated, designed to reveal the essence of this dangerous man. The system has uncovered the true nature of Kim Nam Ane, a Chunabi whose abnormal adaptation has turned him into a formidable opponent. Dok Jae understood that most of the Chunibyo, unable to bear the nightmare, passed into oblivion, but Kim Nam Woong was different. Crazy Demon. This nickname did not simply reflect his Chunibyo, but also spoke of something much deeper and more disturbing. Suddenly, the madman extended his hand, offering an alliance, as if Kim Dok Jha was worthy of standing beside him. And the system confirmed, the madman was impressed, his sympathy for Dokja increased. The understanding between them grew stronger, and Kim Dok Jae himself realized that this was not just a request, but a carefully thought-out deal. But time was running out. The carriage was plunging into fiery chaos, where the bodies of the fallen were just scenery. The fire engulfed carriage number 3077, consuming the remnants of hope. Every step Kim Dok Jaa took was firm and decisive, cutting a path through the blazing hell. He moved forward, ignoring the destruction, because the goal was more important than any obstacles. Cries of despair and rage were heard from behind the carriage doors. The fight for the spoils was gaining momentum. 2 different forces, 2 worlds collided in one carriage, and their gaze spoke of the inevitability of the upcoming confrontation. Kim Dok Jaa knows that an alliance with a mad demon guarantees survival, but an inner voice, reinforced by knowledge of the future, whispers of a different path. As a reader who knew the fate of Kim Nam Yuen, he saw through him both the past and the future, but now the madman demanded to give way. Rage was boiling in Kim Nam-un's eyes. He would not let the prey that was already in his clutches escape, but someone's hand suddenly grabbed his wrist, as if trying to stop the inevitable. Kim Dok Jae's gaze was full of determination. He held the demon tightly, not allowing him to move. The madman was perplexed and asked where this sudden righteousness came from. Or perhaps it was just a new manifestation of his madness. Kim Do-kei, JAA, only smirked, recalling the irritating features of Kim Nam-woong from the novel, realizing that in front of him was still the same smug brat. The madman looked down on him, and every word he said only deepened the long-established impression. Their gazes met in tense silence, and the fury in Kim Nam-woong's eyes foreshadowed a storm. The next moment, Kim Nam-un burst out, attacking with a stream of purple energy, shouting, "Get out of the way!" Kim Do-kei JAA dodged it deftly, while the madman, surprised for only a second, chuckled contentedly, confirming his worst expectations. Without giving the enemy time to recover, Kim Nam-eun unleashed a new wave of destructive force, reinforced by insane energy. Kim Doc JAA realized with horror that this was not just an attack, but a unique skill that only a select few possess. The madman floated in the air, shrouded in an ominous purple glow, his skills awakened too soon. A powerful blow shook the carriage and threw Kima Dokzh back, showing the full force of the awakened energy. Kim Nam-un was triumphant, bursting into wild laughter, feeling his incredible, growing power. His madness was so strong that the book's protagonist himself, despite Kim Nam-woong's psychopathic nature, managed to recruit him thanks to his talents. Kim Doc JAA, trying to cope with the shock, frantically considered whether to resort to extreme measures. At that moment, a message appeared before his eyes, distorted and incomprehensible, causing him to cry out in bewilderment. In the empty carriage, among the wreckage, a furious cry rang out. "Damn! Where the hell did those bugs go?" An ominous sound, as if the air itself had been torn apart, deafened Kim Do-kei JHA and his companions. Kim Nam-un, the mad demon, appeared before them, emitting deadly purple energy. His gaze, burning with madness, was aimed at only one goal, to destroy everything in his path. With a wild cry, he rushed forward, a whirlwind of destruction following him. Rage contorted his features as he realized his attacks were missing their mark. But Kim Doc JHA remained unfazed. His exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader, had been activated, granting him an advantage. A furious flurry of blows, each of which could be the last, rushed past him. With incredible grace, he dodged the deadly attacks, as if anticipating every move. There was a steely determination in his eyes, ready to take on the challenge. "How nimble you are," the mad demon growled, not understanding how his enemy was escaping inevitable reprisal. Kim Doc JAA knew that for now he could only dodge, but every moment brought him closer to a counterattack. "You only have 2 minutes, Kim Doke," JHA said calmly, watching the enemy's growing panic. The mad demon's eyes narrowed, and an ominous flame blazed in them. But Kim Dope JJ's gaze fell on the lying old woman. Her death would mean the end of the scenario. "I can't let this happen," flashed through his mind, and he rushed forward to prevent disaster. With a sly grin, Kim Nam-woong crazy demon watched as Kim Doke AAA pulled out a knife. Knife fight. The skill is activated, and a sharp blade rushes straight to the enemy's heart. While piercing the demon, Kim Doke JAA shields the defenseless victim with his body. Burned by searing pain, he realized the full power of the mad demon obsessed with war. But the demon, pressing on the wound, only increased his pressure, his eyes burning with malice, promising a continuation of the battle. Kim Doc-ja, wincing in pain but not giving up, supported the old man whose life was hanging by a thread. Blood stained the floor, but he stubbornly moved forward, carrying the fragile burden in his arms through this hell. There was determination in his eyes. To lose now meant death, and death was not for him. It was a merciless world where the strong devoured the weak, and Kim Doc-ja felt it on his skin. The harsh reality that survival required not only strength, but also a willingness to embrace the darkest sides of existence became clear. The mad demon, Kim Nam-woong, smirked and declared that time was running out and the weak were destined to fall. A spark lit up deep in Kim Doc-ja's gaze, a spark of awareness that everyone must find their own path to salvation. Kim Nam-woong asked his absurd lifeform question with a carefree smile, but Kim Doc-ja sensed a catch. And he found it. His hand clenched, and a clear answer sounded in his head, the key to this maddening puzzle. A powerful blow, honed by intuition and desperation, brought him not only victory, but also a priceless reward: coins. Kim Nam-woong, looking at what was happening with disbelief, dismissed the question, not realizing that his world was changing. But the demon attacked again, his dagger flashing in the air, and only the system notification about the coins saved Kim Doc-ja from certain death. Making an instant decision, he poured all his savings into physique, feeling his body gain new strength. The demon's blade pierced, but this time not into flesh, but into something solid, surrounded by purple energy. The blade bounced off the blow, the ringing sound echoed throughout the carriage, and the demon froze in amazement. Kim Nam-woong finally looked at Kim Dok-ja for real, realizing that the person in front of him was no longer the same victim. The madman, without any embarrassment, continued his strange speech about grasshoppers, but a hidden threat could already be felt in his words. But Kim Dok-ja didn't flinch. His eyes burned with a cold, determined fire as he frantically searched for a way out of the situation. Time flowed inexorably. The countdown hung over them, counting down the last moments before the inevitable denouement, and Kim Nam-woon, licking his dry lips, just grinned, anticipating the coming massacre. A maddened Kim Nam-woon, his face twisted in rage, continued his attacks, unable to understand how the man was still standing. Kim Dok-ja only gritted his teeth, enduring the blows, but was not broken. 4 seconds. The rest of the world narrowed down to this number, measuring the last moments of life. The little creature Bio, looking around in fear, could not understand the scale of the tragedy that had occurred. While he was in another carriage, a real nightmare unfolded here, soaking the floor in blood and resulting in the death of many. Scarlet puddles spread underfoot, testifying to a brutal massacre that left no chance. Kim Dok-ja stood among the survivors, their faces reflecting horror and despair, but also a certain grim determination. Lee Henson, with a mark on his face, looked exhausted, but his gaze remained wary. Despite her slight smile, Yu Sang-ah couldn't hide her anxiety as she watched what was happening. Lee Gil-yan looked at what had happened with a serious expression, while Han Myung-oh clenched his fists, full of anger and indignation. Kim Nam-woong's body lay lifeless on the floor. The knife in his head spoke of a tragic end. Kim Dok-ja bowed his head, his gaze filled with sadness and inevitability. Moments from the recent past came to mind, when desperate cries for salvation were heard. Kim Nam-woon pleaded, trying to awaken compassion in his interlocutor, but received only a cold question. Why does he need this? These are the rules of the old world, came the answer. New times require new laws. A desperate cry, full of fear of imminent death, broke the silence, but was powerless to change fate. Kim Dok-ja held him, and the blood that stained both of them spoke louder than words. You're right, thought Kim Dok-ja. I'm the same as you. He felt a heavy guilt for those he could have saved but did not, and a strange curiosity about his own cold-bloodedness. He was terrified by how easily he perceived all this horror, as if he were reading another page of a gripping but alien story. Kim Dok-jaa looks around, assessing the aftermath, the blood on his jacket evidence of the recent massacre for which the system had reduced his reward. The driver's office turned into a bloody mess. His only achievement in this nightmare was survival. And as the train picked up speed, rushing away from the station, the system indifferently awarded him the title of serial killer and a paltry reward for normally completing the scenario. The world outside the window was filled with light again, but for the passengers it was only a reflection of a bygone normality. Blood on their faces and clothes was the price of survival. Those who survived lay on the floor, wounded and shocked, hardly daring to believe that the nightmare had passed. A breath of relief swept through the carriage. The train was moving, promising a way home, although Kim Dok-ja and the others knew that home might no longer be there. But the illusion of salvation collapsed at the same moment when a flame opened up outside the window, and a giant winged snake rose from it. Horror gripped them again, forcing them to cling to the last shreds of hope as their eyes clung to the unimaginable monster that stretched across the horizon. Amidst this chaos, only Kim Dok-ja, who stepped across the blood-soaked floor, could fully grasp the scale of what was happening. He, the only reader of Ways of Survival, saw before him not just a monster, but a new chapter that predicted the destruction of this world. The city was burning beneath them. The bridge the train was crossing was barely holding, and every second was filled with a premonition of imminent disaster. The monster that towered over the ruins was the embodiment of the apocalypse that had come for them. They stopped again. It's coming closer. The voices of Mizio Shudzi and Yu Sang screamed, full of despair, while Kim Dok-ja only gritted his teeth, trying to suppress his growing fear. No, this was no ordinary monster. It was an ichthyosaur, an ancient sea monster familiar to him from the pages of the novel. A 7th-class monster, but while they are in the scenario, protected by the rules, he should not touch them. For now, flashed through his thoughts, knowing how quickly the rules of the game were changing. He looked at the small Tokaibi Biyo hovering nearby, and the stars swirling around it. 21 constellations watching them through this channel. Constellations. Ancient beings who had long ago shaped destinies, manipulating these nightmarish scenarios through their Tokaibi, were now watching Kim Dok-ja closely. 21 constellations isn't much, But for this newbie Tokaibi, it was an achievement, and he danced impatiently, anticipating the denouement. In Kim Nam Woong's ways of survival, the crazy demon would have to slaughter the entire train car to survive, but now everything has changed. Kim Do K Jaa killed Kim Nam Woong, and the system, as if bugged, delayed the payment, while the angry constellations seemed to hold their breath. It's funny how a world where yesterday there were only gray everyday life suddenly sparkled with bloody colors, revealing the preferences of invisible spectators. Just a day ago, he himself was an observer, a mere reader of someone else's tragedy, but now their roles have changed. While some constellations longed for his death, others, on the contrary, admired him, generously showering him with coins, the currency of a new, cruel world. Let them watch, let them revel in the show, but one day they'll have to pay for every glance, and the price will be high. In the chaos of the carnage, with reality crumbling at the seams, Yu Sung-ah tried to break through the fog of his detachment. He apologized for not being able to save others, for the fact that his knowledge was powerless in the face of inevitable death. Her gaze was full of questions. How did he manage to survive? How could he be so calm in the midst of this horror? She waved off her bewilderment, throwing him words of gratitude, to which he only responded with a silent question. She remembered how he had, without thinking, pushed her away from mortal danger by throwing a cage of insects. He tried to convince himself that it was just an accident, a chain of unforeseen events. But Tokebi, smiling maliciously, was already trumpeting the completion of the first scenario, anticipating the show. 5 survivors instead of 1, the Tokayebi was delighted, but in his plans there was only one hero, the athletic Lee Henson. Not Lee Henson, but another. Lee Henson, this frightened child who found himself next to Kim Dok Jaa. Kim Dok Jaa bends down to pick up the boy, offering him more than just salvation. The child whom Kim Dok Jaa had saved from certain death now clung to him as if he were the last ray of hope. His eyes reflected all the pain and horror of what he had experienced, but now a faint spark of faith flickered in them. Kim Dok Jaa looks at the boy, seeing in him not just a victim, but a potential companion. "Do you want to live?" he asks, and there is not a drop of sympathy in this question, only the cold calculation of a survivor aware of his unique role. He touched the child's head, offering him a deal, life in exchange for a future where they would both become part of a new, unpredictable story. Kim Do-K DOA doesn't care about the opinions of his co-stars or other survivors. He simply wants to live, despite everything, in this merciless world. Kim Dok Jha, lost in his thoughts, understood that in order to survive the coming events, it was necessary to attract the attention of higher powers. Meanwhile, Xin Yu-sung, shaken by his experience, naively asks if they can finally go free. Amid the chaos, former manager Han My-young-oh, a man with truly amazing luck, stood bloodied but unharmed. Han My-young-oh, indignant at the delay, shouts that they have fulfilled all the conditions, not realizing the hidden catch in the mysterious Bi Hyung's question, and hell breaks loose outside. A gigantic demon of the horizon bursts forth from the depths of the water, its roar shaking the world. The spectacle shocks everyone, but Kim Do-K only notes reservedly, "In any case, I'm impressed." Kan-ul, a creature from another world, looks at the survivors with bewilderment, as if they were grasshoppers, amazed by their unexpected resilience. And so, it announces a reward, the right to receive sponsorship from the constellation for successfully completing the first scenario. But there is no joy on the faces of the survivors, and Biyo, or Kanul, is perplexed why such a stunning reward does not cause delight. For Kim Do-K Jaa, this is predictable. No one but him knows about the constellations and sponsorship, which means they are still incredibly weak. Covered in blood and confused, they just look at him, not understanding what is happening, and Kim Do-K Jaa decides to show them, not explain. A sharp click is heard in the air, and the space around begins to shimmer. Blue holographic screens flash before each of them, offering them a choice that will change their destinies forever. Another click, and these mysterious projections become clearer. On people's faces there is a mixture of horror, hope, and complete incomprehension. 4. Kim Dok-A Josh states calmly, and Yoosash addresses him with a silent question. Yu Sang, sees 2 strange sentences on her screen, and Kim Do-K advises her to think rationally, like a qualification test. To her surprise, she received 2 offers, which, as Kim Do-K notes, is a great success for a first script, since the main event has arrived, the selection of a sponsor. Kim Dok JAH himself has 4 constellations eager to become his sponsors, showing particular interest. He knows that the constellations do not reveal their true names, offering only mysterious titles, and the survivors will have to unravel their identities themselves. One of them is the mysterious Black Abyssal Dragon, a powerful entity and the leader of the Black Cloud Group, whose true name is incredibly long and ominous. This sponsor promises incredible attacking power early on, which would seem ideal for surviving in brutal scenarios. But the price for such power is terrible: loss of sanity, turning into a mad killer, and, strangest of all, this dragon preferred only special people. The first option is discarded due to its insidious nature, and Kim Do-kei, JHA, shuddering with surprise, begins to study the second. Before him appears the majestic judge of hellfire, radiating vengeance and righteous anger, whose name is unwittingly misleading. After all, this title does not hide a demon, but the shining archangel Uriel, whose divine power is capable of performing both judgment and mercy. This is certainly a powerful constellation, although it imposes its own limitations, because the path of absolute good does not tolerate compromises. Then his gaze turns to the third option, the mysterious hidden schemer, whose silhouette melts into the flickering of distant stars. Kim Dok. Jay's eyes narrow, trying to figure out this mysterious figure that appeared before him for the first time. As the only reader, he had never encountered any mention of this constellation in the novel, only vague, fleeting hints. He is sure that this constellation, despite its intriguing name, does not possess great power, and therefore his gaze moves to the last, fourth choice. Unexpectedly, Kim Do-kei JAA realizes that the fourth sponsor, who has appeared so early, causes him real awe. Before him appears the great sage, equal to heaven, Sun Wukong himself, chained in the shackles of pain on the mountain of fruits and flowers. This fragment of the novel, describing his unparalleled power, is forever etched in his memory, and Kim Do-kei JAA does not understand why such a great being turned his gaze upon him. Meanwhile, in the train carriage, the survivors around him are also immersed in their own agonizing choices, illuminated by the cold light of the system windows. In the empty carriage, among the bodies of the fallen, the question hangs in the air: will he be able to defeat the one who became his sponsor? Suddenly, BIHEN BI7623 appears, asking with a grin if everyone has made their choice, and notices someone's particularly curious decision. The devious demon announces a 10-minute break to prepare the next scenario, leaving the survivors in tense anticipation. Kim Do-kei stares into the void, his gaze full of determination but also hints of deep thought. Realizing they have only moments, he rallies the remaining survivors, urging them to unite in the face of the unknown. Amidst the chaos and bloodshed, 2 strangers shake hands. Lee Hunzen introducing himself as Kim Do-kei JA, acknowledging the absurdity of their situation. Lee Henson bitterly admits that the time of being a soldier has passed, his hand tightly clasping Kim Do-kei's palm, revealing a hidden strength worthy of a tank. Kim Do-kei makes a decision that will change Lee Hyun-sung's fate, and Lee Hyun-sung expresses deep gratitude, realizing that Kim Do-kei saved them not only from death, but also from the loss of humanity. Suddenly, someone's hand falls on Kim Do-kei's shoulder, and the sarcastic voice of Han Mi-young-oh is heard, mockingly calling him Mr. Worker. With a fake smile, Han Mi-young-oh tries to remind Kim Do-kei of their previous hierarchy, as if nothing has changed. But Kim Do-kei abruptly cuts him off, reminding him that now is not the time for old roles and office titles, and Lee Hen-sun silently watches this tense exchange. Rage boils over, his voice breaking into a scream, blaming Kim Do-kei-ju for everything, but Kim Do-kei-ju only orders him to be quiet with icy calm. Han Mi-young-oh's anger reaches its peak, his silhouette distorted by impotent anger against the backdrop of a gathering darkness where the old rules no longer matter. Kim Do-kei notes with a cold smile that even shock cannot penetrate the armor of Han Mi-young-oh's former world, and only a physical shock could possibly make him realize reality. Kim Do-kei's gaze shifts to the raging world outside the window, where the Horizon demon is wreaking havoc, and his words send Han Mi-young-oh crashing to the ground like a slap in the face. Do you really think your company still exists? Standing among the survivors, their faces filled with shock and disbelief, Kim Do-kei JA firmly declares, "This is not a joke. This is not a dream. This is a new reality that demands action." A game interface flashes before Kim Do-kei's eyes, demonstrating the merciless rules of the new world, and he, turning to his stunned companions, asks, Is there anyone else who doesn't understand? In response, there was only deafening silence and the bewildered looks of the survivors, whose faces were frozen in horror and complete incomprehension of what was happening. Yao Saea sang. Age compares what is happening to some absurd novel. Lee Yan Sun desperately seeks confirmation that this is just a bad dream, but Kim Dok Josh delivers a harsh verdict. This is reality. Lee Henson, sensing Kim Dok-jae's confidence, asks about the next steps, and at that moment, the system confirms his growing trust and understanding in his leader. Kim Dok-jaa declares his decision without hesitation. We have to get out of here, now. The survivors look at Kim Dok-jae's back, their eyes wide with surprise and confusion as his words sound like madness. Behind him, the monstrous demon of the horizon rages, but Kim Dok-daa does not even turn around, his gaze directed forward into the unknown distance. Han Ma-young bursts into a panicked scream, calling Kim Dok-jo crazy. Lee Hai-yun-sung warns of the danger, but Kim Dok-jo ignores the objections. His decision remains unwavering. And at that very moment, a powerful energy bursts out from deep within Kim Dok-jae, shaking the air and causing Lee Henson and USAS to flinch in sudden shock. Kim Dok-jae and his companions were stunned by the powerful surge of energy that had just shaken the carriage. Making Bok. JOK's hearts were racing. Is this a new scenario or something else, since the Tokaibi hasn't appeared yet? Meanwhile, from the whirlwind of golden flame that enveloped the entrance, a silhouette emerged, whose steps sent tremors throughout the entire carriage. Dachas, why? Nanasan and why you sang, ah you sang, Isik why you sang. Looked at the source of the destructive force in horror, while Akaim Doke Jaa stared straight ahead, his face stern. There was a grim determination in his eyes. He knew exactly who was coming, and his words were heavy. We must leave this carriage immediately, said talking IMS, said to Lee Henson, who was at a loss to understand the gravity of the situation. Otherwise, continued SKAM Dok JHA, we will all die before the next scenario begins. Lee Henson, trying to find at least some argument, objected that there is not necessarily an enemy behind the door without guarantees. But Kim Dok-jae knew the truth. The one there had survived, and the price of that survival was the death of others. Do you still want to meet him? SKIM, Tae, coldly, causing Lee, Yoon Sung and Leu sang IOOSASASA quote to freeze. In a panic, they started checking the doors, but Lee Henson desperately realized that the passage was broken, and Yu Sanax only confirmed this. Kim Dok-jh Hack turned around and reported that the barrier had been removed, but the other door was also hopelessly damaged. The car was slowly turning into a trap. Out of 8 doors, only 3 remained unchecked, and Lee Henson prayed that at least one of them was intact. Suddenly, a new wave of destruction was generated by a powerful explosion that tore apart the silence and the metal. The force of the impact threw everyone in the carriage, throwing them into chaos and causing people to fall. Seeking KGAA, Miney Fistigre Sh, with his lips pressed together from tension, felt his body shudder with each thrust. And almost immediately after the first, another deafening explosion followed, mercilessly finishing off what was left of the carriage. Debris flew in all directions. Passengers screamed in fear, trying to grab onto anything. Kim Dok-jae's face expressed a mixture of despair and incredible concentration in this pitch-black hell. Dok-jasi, come here! Yu sang Aisha's desperate cry pierced the roar, calling him to her as the world around her crumbled. Despite the chaos, hope flared up. The doors seemed to open onto a new carriage, beckoning to salvation. But instead of relief, there was a terrifying grinding sound, and the doors only opened briefly before becoming stuck again. The group's last hope of escape was as shattered as the first, and time was running out. Kim Dok-jaa considered his resources, knowing that he couldn't afford to spend coins on skill boosts at the beginning of the scenario. His gaze landed on Lee Henson, and TKM Dok-jaa ordered him to activate a unique skill without explaining why. System information about Lee Henson's appeared before SKIM Dok-jae's eyes, confirming his attributes and unique abilities. Luckily, Lee Henson lived up to his memory of the novel, a soldier with skills useful in a crisis. Lee Henson's hesitation turned to determination under the guidance of Kim Dok-jim, who told him to just think about using force. And then, Lee Henson let out a piercing scream, releasing his internal energy. A green aura surged through his tense body, filling him with a power capable of moving mountains. The success was clear. Lee Henson activated his stigma, and a new, deeper trust was born between them. They ran, eager to escape the collapsing train car, but racing manist AMDOKJ knew that an even greater threat awaited them. A sudden thought struck him, confirming KMDOKJ's worst premonitions. Their gaze turned to the sky, where a small but ominous silhouette appeared in the bright light. It was the Fa Falls King, and his voice was filled with menacing displeasure, hinting at the prematureness of their flight. Panic gripped everyone as the realization of their mistake crashed down on them, threatening to tear their consciousness apart. FAK King just chuckled, his fingers snapped, and the world around him fell silent, accepting his game. At that very moment, translucent screens appeared in front of everyone, heralding new rules for the deadly game. Kim Dok-jaa stared calmly at his screen, as if he had been expecting this turn of events. A broken bridge? Why you? Sanik muttered in confusion, but a Kim Dok-jk was already urging her on, realizing that the prediction was about to come true. Explosions engulfed the bridge one after another, and the insightful S. King Dok-jk understood that without cunning, the scenario was doomed to failure. Time was pushing them forward relentlessly, but despite their wounds and exhaustion, Kim Dok-jk and Yusanex believed that they would be able to break through. However, a new threat made Sichian and Hara scream in horror, foreshadowing an even more terrifying development. Directly below them, the water began to churn, forming a giant whirlpool, as if the abyss itself were opening up. From this raging abyss burst forth a gigantic mouth, the harbinger of a sea monster. Through the fiery haze, the head of a monster with glowing red eyes appeared. Skim, Dok Jask Endisk, and Osk realized with horror that before them was something far more ancient and powerful than an ordinary ichthyosaur. The monster opened its toothy mouth, emitting a thunderous roar that seemed to shake the heavens themselves. With each blow, the monster destroyed the bridge, and a desperate cry called for escape while there was even the slightest chance, because in the earlier scenarios, such creatures never attacked the incarnation. There were only 200 meters left to rescue, and DOKAAHA calculated that they would make it before the bridge finally collapsed under the onslaught of this new, incredible threat. But behind all this chaos stood someone whose glowing red eyes sparkled mischievously, and he grinned to himself. After all, an easy game is really not interesting at all? Kim Dok-jaax, wounded and furious, looked up to the sky, realizing that they had been interrupted again. It's boring just running away, isn't it? The sarcastic voice of BI Hyen for meters and BI 7623 sounded in his head, let's liven things up a bit. And then the sky responded, dead consciousnesses returned, and the air around was filled with black ether, foreshadowing a new disaster. The bodies of the fallen, until recently lifeless, began to shudder, enveloped in an ominous blue glow. Seeing the rising dead, Dadagu Yu Sanak was horrified with disbelief, realizing that they were zombies, and screams of horror echoed throughout the station when it became clear that these vile creatures were awakened demons. Despite the onslaught, Kim Dok-jha and the others managed to reach Oksu Station, where it seemed like their last chance for a break. But the station was no refuge. The rising dead, enveloped in blue flame, were already surrounding them, condemning them to a new, desperate battle. Exhausted and bloodied, they stood on the platform, surrounded by a countless army of living nightmares, each of which thirsted for their flesh. With a determined look, full of rage and last hope, Kim Dok-jha gave the order, everyone on the ground. A deafening roar shook the air as the monstrous creature unleashed its wrath, and someone cried out the name, Kim Dok-jham, in despair. In the whirlwind of destruction, amidst the chaos, their eyes searched for answers as the ground beneath their feet continued to shake. Clouds of dust engulfed the figure, but the desperate cry continued, piercing the roar of the debris. Kim Dok-jh himself collapsed, crippled, and exhausted, and anxious questions about his condition were heard around him. His gaze, full of pain and awareness, looked into the distance, trying to comprehend what was happening. The bridge, the only route to salvation, was destroyed, and an apocalyptic glow blazed over the horizon. From the heights of the devastated city, among the bodies of the fallen, Keish, Han, My Young Aish, and Yu Aishi realized the hopelessness of their situation. A new monstrous attack made them cry out as the monster's tail flashed past them just a few steps. The bridge was destroyed, and Kim Dok-jaax realized that he was trapped together with Han Ma Yuno and Gyue Sangox, something he had not foreseen at all. In the distance, fortunately, Lee Gillenex Kluing and Ellie Henson found shelter, their rescue a glimmer of hope in the darkness. The question of, what should we do now, hung in the air when Kim Doke Jha felt one of the constellations intervene by blessing someone in their group. YUSASA Connex flinched as she felt a sudden, mysterious message in her head, and Kim Kan Jakong sensed a strange energy. It became clear the constellation that chose YUSAN Ak as its embodiment was interfering with the scenario to save her, which was an incredible rarity even for the great ways to survive. Kim Do KJHA tried to figure out which constellation had decided to become her patron, but the information about YUSAN AJ remained impenetrable, as if hidden by an invisible barrier. Her desperate cry pierced the air again, warning, warning KOKJHA of a new danger. Behind flashed through his mind as, quote, KCOM Doche Che ISO turned sharply, preparing to attack. A powerful blow threw him aside, piercing him with pain and the realization of betrayal. He slid across the ground, stunned, but his gaze quickly found the one who dared to attack. An ominous, ethereal figure appeared before them, and, tracking Tok Che struggled to his feet, realizing that their situation had become even more desperate. No time to be daydreaming, he thought, taking a drag, for before him stood a ninth-class demon, a human type, a terrible metamorphosis born of black ether. Vocal round, MAM. NAMA demon, tormented by pain and rage, turned out to be the very creature of the black ether that now stood in their way. King Do KJHA tried to use his unique skill, Omniscient Reader, but the system refused him. This creature had no consciousness. A desperate cry escaped the lips of Kim Doke JK, who realized that there was no other way out but to immediately cross this ominous bridge, even though there were only 3 of them. In the chaos of the battle, he turned around, his gaze pierced with horror as he cried out, "Why use Sanax's name?" urging her to take immediate action. And then Dax Kim. Dok Jaa Ax saw Han Myung O, as if possessed, grab Yoo Sang Og and drag her along with him, ignoring her resistance. His eyes reflected the shock of the betrayal he witnessed as ECNA struggled desperately, her cries for freedom ringing in the cold air. Han Myung O's face was distorted with a grimace of fear and determination. He shouted the name Kim Dok Jih, trying to justify his actions. At that moment, the bridge began to collapse under their feet, and Han Myung rushed forward, leaving XKIM Dok JUS behind, calling out to him. He left and abandoned me? Rage flared in the heart of Kim Duke Jik, while the constellations watched indifferently and the judge of Hellfire admired his involuntary sacrifice. Now Kim Dok Ja Aksh, having taken on the burden of salvation, carried the lifeless body of Yu Sang Ok, trying to understand what was happening with the help of character description. But even his most valuable skill failed, blocked by invisible forces, and only a vague knowledge of the stigma of the lame one-legged steed from the club-legged trickster pierced his mind. A bitter smile appeared on his lips as he realized the stupidity and despair that had driven Kamwai Young O to take this step. Meanwhile, 6KIM, Ma'am Wung the crazy demon howled in excruciating pain, his voice echoing throughout the ruined bridge. "Oh shit!" Kim Doc Ji cried out when he saw that they were surrounded by not one, but a whole horde of demons hungry for flesh. He fought back desperately, his mind frantically searching for a way out, realizing that he couldn't cross this damned bridge alone. The idea of neutralizing one of the demons and going through with him flashed through his head, but was immediately discarded as too risky. Time was running out, and the digital timer showed only 15 minutes left in the scenario. Sikikaniel hovered above him, mockingly surveying the scene and marveling at Ek's resilience, but immediately noted with disappointment that not a single constellation was willing to help this incarnation. Tsk, what a shame, a voice rang out in the air as Kermdok Jha fought off the demons, his knife flashing in the darkness. Meanwhile, on the other side of the bridge there was their only salvation. Spei Yu Shang, A Shang Yu Miu, and the other 2 survivors watched their doom approach. Kim Doke Jock rushed forward again, his boot slamming hard into the shattered ground, sending debris flying around. Wounded but unbroken, he stood frozen on the edge of the rift, clutching a single knife in his hand, his gaze sliding across the dark waters. The bridge, their last hope, was beginning to crumble, and from the other side, out of the twilight, a horde of zombies was advancing, their eyes glowing with an ominous light. "Damn it, I don't have a single fighting skill," flashed through Kim Dokurake's mind as sweat poured down his temples. At that critical moment, something unimaginable appeared before him, a dazzling book of pure light, marking the emergence of the bookmark skill. His eyes widened in shock, and the world around him froze for a moment. A bookmark? Kim Doke Jha whispered, trying to comprehend the meaning of this unexpected gift. System messages flashed through the air, announcing the activation of character bookmarks and the provision of 3 available slots. Meanwhile, SKIMDM, NAMA demon, whose gaze was blazing with madness and had gone mad with the lust for battle, was screaming furiously, tearing the air with his cries. Well, I guess I'll intuitively understand how to use it. Point SKUSKIM.JSK decided, determination flashing in his eyes. For a moment, KIM Nam UN Mad Demon's consciousness broke through the veil of madness. His voice, full of the thirst for destruction, echoed, "Ha ha ha! Yes, my strength is overflowing." A ghostly shadow, personifying his destructive will, whispered from the darkness, "A new world needs new laws." The system reported a low level for the bookmark skill, and a shortened activation time of just 1 minute. The character's understanding was also incomplete. But even partial power was enough. Craig's eye Kim Dok's eye K activated, Eclipse Live in 1, and his blade became enveloped in dark, seething energy. A disgusting zombie, with burning eyes and a bared mouth, rushed to attack, but it was too late. A glowing purple figure materialized next to Curl A. M. Dok Jaa Act J, the embodiment of the insane power of Kim Nam Wong Si Crazy, Demon A. There were now 2 of them, Sakim, Dok Jha and his demonic ally, unleashing a flurry of blows on the enemies, purple energy sparking in the air. The original's Kim Nam Wong Crazy Demon, exhausted and bleeding, gasped for breath, his body shaking in pain. "I don't want to die," he croaked as life slowly left him. And in this whirlwind of battle, SKIM Duak and his phantom companion moved as one, their attacks swift and merciless. Mean. SKIM Dok Jaa axe bore the marks of countless battles, his determination never wavering even when the ghost of his own shadow reflected his path. Every breath was a struggle, and the blade in his hand was stained with someone else's blood, an extension of his despair. The crowds of shadows were closing in, and he realized with bitterness how unbearably difficult every step was in this bloody massacre. There was a shadow of expectation in his thoughts, an impatient call to the one who should have come but was still late. And then, gathering the last of his strength, he released a wave of pure energy that rushed through the ranks of his opponents, scattering them to the sides. Sounds of pain and destruction filled the space as his attack rained down on his enemies, causing them to retreat in terror. His foot mercilessly stepped over the fallen bodies, each step a reminder of the price of survival. With a bloody blade in his hand and a devilish grin on his face, Kim Doke Jaa axe seemed to be the embodiment of the most ruthless will. In the distance, under the same sky, the bridge was splitting under the impact of an unknown force, as if the earth itself was groaning in pain. A new wave of monsters approached, and Komdo KJJ raised his blade again, ready to meet the inevitable fight. With lightning speed he rushed forward, his blow accurate and deadly. His gaze was full of fierce determination, a mixture of fatigue and boundless will to fight. Suddenly, a heavy footstep was heard, heralding someone's arrival, someone's intervention in the chaos of the battle. The shadows receded as a new figure emerged from the shroud of battle, its appearance unexpected and commanding. Beneath the fluttering cloak lay a power that had not yet been revealed, but was already palpable. Yu Jun Hyuk Ash walked through the crowd of monsters, his figure radiating an aura of calm and unshakable power. His eyes glowed with a golden light, and steam billowed from his mouth, as if the very energy of this world was subject to his will. Among the dark silhouettes, the monster questioned who dared to invade their domain, unaware of the threat it saw before itself. A Kim Doke Jaa looked at the stranger in amazement, realizing that in front of him stood a figure of unimaginable power, exceeding all expectations. The system immediately produced a short profile, IU Janueshukake, a third circle regressor, a legendary pro-gamer whose unique skills were astounding. A moment later, his throat is squeezed in a steel grip, knocking the last breath from his lungs, causing the world around him to swim. In this crimson glow of the end of the world, Yu Jun Hyuk held him like a puppet whose strings were about to snap. Shocked, he struggled to utter the question echoing in his head, "How is this possible? How did you survive, regressor?" And then Akumdok, Jaa, realized the terrible irony. The first method of survival in this ruined world was embodied in the one who could now destroy it. Before him stood not just the regressor Syu Jun Hyu Kak, but the living embodiment of the greatest tragedy, with which, in essence, the apocalypse of this world began. Maber of Kology, Akim 4. Akim Afarage eyes darted around feverishly, trying to comprehend the incredible truth he had once read in a novel. Meanwhile, some distance away, Yusana Sung, overcome with anxiety, tried in vain to break through the invisible barrier, calling out to their comrade. Around them, the world was crumbling. Giant concrete blocks were cracking under the onslaught of furious waves, foreshadowing imminent death. In the cacophony of destruction, Yu Junha-Yu's steely gaze pierced him, demanding an answer to a single question, his name. Kim Dot Jaaes felt fate intertwining him with this man, this bastard, who was none other than the main character of his favorite saga. He gave his name Kim Du Aek I Che Jaak Ek, to which the regressor only dryly noted that it sounded strange and that he often heard similar things. But the dialogue was interrupted by a sharp blow to the stomach, which threw Skim Doke JHH back, depriving him of the remaining air. Despite the pain, he heard Yu Junha-Yuk confess, "You're tough," which didn't sound like praise but rather like a cold remark. There was tension between them when Yo Junha-Yuk asked how Kim Doke Jaa mastered the use of coins so quickly, and he replied, "Just like you." Kim Dok Pren Jaa cursed his fate. They barely survived the first scenario, and this regressor already possessed monstrous power that surpassed all limits. The situation was critical. Yu Junha-Yu Kwok, who had experienced 3 regressions, had become much more dangerous. His personality had become distorted, and now he would not hesitate to use any means to achieve his goals. I don't hear the answer. It sounded cold. And Yu Junha-Yuke demanded respect, making it clear who was in charge here. But Taskim Dok JHH Ake, even under threat, was not going to obey, and a silent challenge could be read in his clenched fist. The answer came immediately, another crushing blow to the chest which was supposed to break any resistance. And yet, through the pain, Kim Doke Jax only chuckled, knowing that, despite all the power of the regressor, he himself was the older one in this story, its true reader. Kim Doke Jha Shak chuckled, challenging the regressor in the face. "Shouldn't you be more polite yourself?" Uioo Junha-Yuk's question, "Do you know who I am?" only allowed Skim Doke Ja Ake to reveal his secret. The regressor was once just lines in thousands of chapters for him. "I'm your fan," confessed Kim Doke Jaa, the one who himself extolled and cursed Yoo Junha-Yuk's image, fueling his fame. He cursed his failures and warmly supported him in the darkest times, knowing his every step in advance. "I have followed you," Kim Doke Aha croaked, as his grip tightened along the path of 3,000 chapters of history. "A fan, you say?" Yoo said thoughtfully. "I haven't heard anything like that in a long time." "Your arrogance is forgiven," replied Syo Junha-Yu Kok, "but it won't change your helpless position." But as Kim Doke Jik only chuckled, "I'm only interested in one thing." And the question was asked, "How did you survive in the subway?" The very one that a Kim Doke Jeche had been waiting for, knowing the answer perfectly well. "Will you spare me if I answer?" asked Kim Doke Jok, but an inner voice was already whispering, "He's lying," and Yu Junha-Yuk knew that there would be no mercy. Kim Doke Ji's thoughts raced. What was the point of his knowledge if Yoo Junha-Yuk saw through the deception? But at that moment, history itself approved of his actions. Suddenly, on the brink of life and death, a message flashed in front of Kim Doke Jais. The conditions for the second level of Omniscient Reader had been achieved. "How is this possible?" flashed through Yu Junha-Yuk's mind. "Who the hell is he?" as his grip froze, demanding answers. Kim Doke Jaas sensed a threat. "I'll kill you." Could he really hear Yoo Junha-Yuk's thoughts? Like back then, with the mad demon Kim Namung? Yoo Junha-Yuk looked at Kalo Kiam Doke Jok, his gaze piercing through her, trying to solve this incomprehensible puzzle. "I was just lucky," Kiam Doke Jaa said frankly. An explosion in the neighboring car helped find locusts on the child. Kim Doke Ji's confession was a devastating blow to Yoo Junha-Yuk. The future, as he knew it, was crumbling before his eyes. "It's my fault," whispered Yoo Junha-Yuk's inner voice as he realized that he had caused the explosion and the deaths of those who should have survived. But even in this moment of confusion, Siu Grek's suspicions did not subside. CKSIU game. Doke JHA was too calm, too quickly adapted. Could it be that this guy killed Kim Nam-woona? Wanakyuka came to the conclusion that using Kim Dokeju's for his own purposes was mortally dangerous. The time for questions is up, Kim Doke, Jaya croaked. Let go of me, the script deadline is tight. But Yoo Junhyuk's answer was sharp and his grip only tightened. It won't do. But second Kim Dok JHA did not back down. His gaze was filled with understanding. Too many coincidences flashed through his mind. And suddenly, at this critical moment, Kim Doke JHAH recognizes the legendary SS-level skill Sage's Gaze in the enemy's actions. This gift allowed one to read not just characteristics, but also the deepest hidden secrets of any creature, and Sheikah Im Doke Ziox realized with horror how vulnerable he was. But suddenly, something changed. His unique skill, Fourth Wall, activated like a shield upon noticing the threat. A powerful bolt of energy shot through his body, causing him to scream and spasm uncontrollably. Junhyuk felt the resistance, his grip weakened, and confusion was visible in his eyes. The fourth wall successfully blocked the sage's gaze, but in response, Junhyuk's face showed rage. "Who are you really?" Junhyuk exploded, demanding answers, his voice full of cold, dangerous determination. Energy continued to spark between them as they locked in a death grip, like two poles of attracting forces. His face was contorted with anger, and he looked at Kim Doke Joke with such undisguised fury that the air around them began to tremble. Again, the same chilling question. Who the hell are you? Meanwhile, fighter jets flew over the destroyed bridge, leaving behind plumes of smoke, and Iko M. Doke Oko Doko only thought distantly, damn it. Realization struck him. He had a skill that could counter Sage's gaze, in addition to the already known bookmark, his fourth wall. Junhyuk's face was distorted with confusion. He couldn't understand the nature of this defense. At that moment, Junhyuk made a final decision. Now, I definitely have to kill him. But Kim Doke JHHHH did not give up. Stop! Wait! Damn, this is getting complicated. Kim Doke JHA thought, but you need a reliable partner to get through all 46 scenarios. For a moment, Junhyuk froze, his face expressionless, but his eyes filled with deep thought. I have knowledge of the future, Junhyuk Kim Doke Jaek said quietly, knowledge that you do not have. In response, Junhyuk activated the lie detector, and the system's verdict made both of them shudder. True. It can't be another prophet besides Anna Croft and here in Korea too? This thought shocked Junhyuk to the depths of his soul. Junhyuk, without hiding his disbelief, asked the decisive question about the gift of foresight, to which Kim Doke JJ calmly replied, something similar. He reminded that the reggressor's knowledge will always be incomplete. While the prophet can provide the answers needed for victory, Tekking Bear and Spurious Afri and Tekking Bear A, Lasting Bear RLO EOOES realized that for few YOO its Bikare succeed Valest, there was no more valuable partner than someone who could see the future. The tension hung in the air, and every second became a test of strength. A shadow of cunning flashed across Kim Doke JH's face, foreshadowing a new, bold move. The Junhyu was tormented by doubts. Should he trust the prophet whose words foretell the battle with Zarathustra and the end of the 4/6 scenario? But the clock was inexorably counting down the last 50 seconds, and first Pi Oo Junhyuk, although mentally already called him a companion. His gaze, sharp as steel, focused as the timer ticked down the final 40 seconds. It's decided. You will be my companion, came the final decision as the bridge suddenly began to shake beneath their feet. The sudden shock made Kim Doke JHSE flinch, and a terrifying roar was heard behind him. Wait, cough. Cough. Kim Doke Josh breathed out as Junhyuk suddenly pulled him forward, preventing him from collapsing. An abyss opened up beneath them, swallowing up the even bridge, a miracle that would disappear if an odd number of daredevils tried to cross it. Below, amidst the chaos, Mitsuo Shudzies and his comrades watched in horror as the bridge dissolved into thin air. Kim Doke JAAX didn't look back. His gaze was directed forward through the dust and destruction. His face contorted with tension as he felt Junhyuk's hands pulling him along with incredible force. Even though his mental strength was running low and the unique skill character description was deactivated, Kim Dok-chk was glad that he was able to convince the regressor. The skill's disabling was worrying, but the possibility of surviving this chaos outweighed all concerns. It's amazing how quickly he managed to sway Yu Jun Hayuk-esque to his side and cross the collapsing bridge, avoiding certain death. Suddenly, Yoo Jun Yuk stopped, causing Kim Dok-jass to flinch from the question that sounded like a final sentence. If you truly are a prophet, then you know your future too, right? His eyes held a cold expectation of an answer that could decide their fate. Yu Jun Hayuk did not release his grip, and there was a fear in Kim Dokj's eyes that foreshadowed something worse than just falling. A giant SHO horizon demon burst from the watery depths, its mouth gaping in anticipation of prey. Horror pierced Kim Dokjaa as RA when he realized the hopelessness of his situation, hanging over the abyss in the clutches of fate. Should I unclench my hand or not? This question hung in the air like the sword of Damocles over the prophet's head. With a slight, almost mad grin, Yu Jun Yukak enjoyed the moment of absolute power. Kim Do-jaa steeled himself, trying to grasp the strategy of this devilishly clever man. Listen to me first, his voice rang out, breaking the deathly silence. He put forward his conditions, demanding not submission but equal cooperation, a bold step on the threshold of destruction. So, will you answer me, prophet? His gaze pierced right through me, demanding an immediate decision. And then, through the pain and fear, a furious, defiant cry broke through. Let me go, you bastard! The grip loosened, and Kim Do-jaa felt a fleeting sense of freedom. But this freedom was only an illusion, instantly replaced by a terrifying fall. With a cry of despair, he fell into the gaping mouth of the monster, and the figure of Yuk only watched from above. Yoo Jun Yuk's smile widened. Now I believe, you really are a prophet. Inside the monstrous womb, Kim Dokjha was a prisoner of utter horror. His body was a limp toy, but his consciousness desperately clung to the elusive life. With a deafening screech, the mouth slammed shut, swallowing him into the dark, damp abyss. The prophet's body was rapidly rushing downwards, plunging into the icy thickness of the water. I have to hold on, his mind whispered, fighting against the encroaching darkness and suffocating pain. He was not the only one who fell victim to this monster. Others, caught off guard, were also pulled into the depths. Kim Dokjaa struggled desperately, spitting out the disgusting liquid that every particle of this place had turned into. The taste and smell were unbearable. The monster's slime itself was trying to devour him from the inside, but he resisted. Through the disgust, the thought broke through. The goal had been achieved. He was in the very belly of the monster, and for now, he was safe. The light from his phone pierced the pitch darkness, revealing a terrifying panorama. He was not alone here. Dozens of victims, crushed and bleeding, became part of this ominous river flowing in the womb. A creepy grin touched Kim Dokj's lips, mixing despair with a mad determination for the future. We had to move on. Through icy water and decaying remains, every second felt like an eternity. Yu Jun Hayuk's words echoed in his head, his curses and harsh instructions about survival, sounding especially cynical. Kim Dokjaa couldn't blame him. Knowing Yu Jun Hayuk's story, the path of a lonely regressor, scorched by past failures. This test was his chance, a chance to prove his worth, but the news that the script had failed threatened to dash his hopes. Overcoming his doubts, he found support amidst the seething chaos, trying to collect his thoughts. Suddenly the water around him began to churn, suggesting the movement of something colossal beneath the surface. The ichthyosaur woke up, and Kim Dokjha realized with horror that only a few moments remained before the secretion of gastric juice would begin. Time was running out. The poisonous acid was about to begin its work, but someone's voice broke the silence, laughing at his despair. The yellow glow intensified, and Tokayebi appeared from the watery abyss, seemingly having been waiting for him all this time. The creature from the ancient legends stood before him, wondering why Kim Dha did not look confused. Because I was waiting for you, Kim Dok-aj answered quietly, not taking his eyes off Tokayebi, as if he had foreseen this meeting. I won't just get out, he said confidently. I'll become strong enough to challenge you. The ichthyosaurs circled around, but Kim Dokjha was already looking beyond this trap, into his future. After all, ahead of him lay not only the exit from the deadly womb, but also the inevitable clash with Yu Jun Hayuk, his future companion. The controller, tiny but menacing, seemed to loom over Kim Do-Joy, demanding payment for the unfulfilled conditions. Sweat trickled down his temples as the realization of the additional scenario's failure weighed on him like the very depths of this womb. Tokevi, on the other hand, smirked, ignoring the monetary aspect and hinting at a much higher price. Kimdok, JHA, stood on the water in the middle of the womb, ready to accept the terms, coins, in exchange for his own life. And the amount Bi hand-voiced pierced his ears, 5,100 coins, an enormous price to buy back just a moment of existence. The system indifferently displayed the exact balance, and Kim Doke JHA clenched his fists. Was this Tokayebi really just mocking him? It was unfairly much, but Bihyun only sarcastically asked if Kim Doak JA wanted to refuse, since the right to choose was still his. Unhappy? Let's finish this right now. His words were laced with an undisguised challenge, to which Kim Doke JHA responded with unexpected calm. This surprised even the all-powerful Tokayebi, who did not expect such audacity from a mortal. Come on, finish me off, Kim Doke JHA said confidently, his gaze direct and indifferent to the threat. But Bihyun, a cunning businessman, had already changed his mind. This man was bringing too much profit to the constellations. Kim Dok, JAA, understood this better than anyone. He was the source of great entertainment for those watching from above. This Bihyun, just a low-ranking Tokaibi, couldn't afford to lose such a star. Returning to Kim Dohaa again, Bihyun again feigned interest and asked if the broadcast was worth all the effort. The rage of the Tokaibi boiled over when Kim Doke JHA, with a sly smile, spoke about the stinginess of the constellations with donations. Then Kim Doke JAA, as if whispering a secret, suggested to Bihyun to close his channel, causing him real shock. The atmosphere inside the womb, ghostly and ominous, seemed like just a backdrop to their strange dialogue. Bihyun, holding the mysterious artifact in his hands, turned back to Kim Doke JAE, now broadcasting to the entire universe. He demanded an answer. How could an ordinary mortal know about a secret broadcast intended for higher beings? But Kim Doke JHA just grinned and waved it off, making it clear that this question no longer had any significance. Kim Dok JAA issued an unexpected challenge, offering BIYO not only to search for powerful creatures, but also to become the greatest streamer in the entire world of demons and monsters. His hand, washed with water, extended forward as if offering an invisible deal. With a sly smile, Kim Doke JAA proclaimed, "Make a treaty with me, and I will raise you to the throne of the king of Tokaebi." These words shocked the little Tokaebi, who only looked at his interlocutor in amazement. The promise of power that echoed across the stream was both enticing and unimaginable. But suddenly, as if a mask had fallen off, a creepy, predatory smile blossomed on Biyo's face. The uncontrollable laughter of Biyo filled the space, interrupted by angry cries full of contempt for the impudent mortal. Kim Doke JHA only nodded, as if confirming a long-known truth to himself. However, Biyo, having regained his former appearance, arrogantly rejected the offer, reminding him that he could not act as a sponsor for an ordinary person. But Kim Dokshe JAA clarified he doesn't need sponsorship or the power of the Tokaibi. His true goal is the Biyo channel. Biyo's confusion turned to mild irritation when he realized that he had not fully grasped the essence of Kim Doke JAA's game. Kim Doke JAA stated bluntly that he wants to sign an exclusive contract with BYO, a contract that could change the rules of the game. BYO laughed, understanding Kim Doke JAA's true motives. Behind the beautiful word, sponsorship, was hidden only sophisticated slavery, and the man wanted to avoid it. But Biyo's angry face twisted again. How dare this mortal encroach on the very essence of their system and talk about a streaming contract without being sponsored? Kim Doke JAA calmly explained that it was precisely the lack of a sponsor that made him unique and desirable for a contract, revealing to Biyo the subtleties of the co-star's motivations. He divided viewers of celebrity broadcasts into two categories, those who crave thrills and those who are looking for a suitable embodiment. For the channel to be successful, it was necessary to please at least one of these groups, provide them with entertainment, or offer them a valuable source of sponsorship. Biyo snorted dismissively, reproaching Kim Doke JA for his lack of success despite all his knowledge. But Kim Doke JAA, unfazed, came up with a mind-blowing idea. What if his channel catered to the needs of both groups at once? Biyo, the insightful one, finally grasped the point. What if an incarnation were to appear that was so attractive that it could hold the interest of the constellations without committing itself to any of them? Kim Dok-jaa leaned over the water, his gaze falling on the little Bio, and, in that moment, a strategy was born that could turn the game around. Bio finally grasped the essence of his apparent recklessness. Abandoning his sponsor was not a weakness, but the basis of his grand design. Bio's impatience was growing, as the Constellation audience, thirsty for spectacle, was already anticipating his new channel, and delay was tantamount to death. There was a buzz in the air, some anticipated disaster, others a sensation, but most insisted that an ordinary person could not surpass a sponsored incarnation. But Kim Dok-jaa merely chuckled, his words firm and filled with confidence. He was not only going to prove the impossible, but also to fulfill his promise by making Bio king. The little Tokaibi, whose eyes glowed red as he listened to his words, realized that before him was not just a man, but someone who defied the very structure of the world. In response to the silent question in Bio's eyes, Kim Dok-jaa only smiled, his gaze sharp as a blade, foreshadowing the coming upheaval. Suddenly, Bio remembered the punishment for the failed script, demanding payment, but Kim Dok-jaa just waved it off, knowing that everything was just beginning. With firm confidence in his voice and an unwavering gaze, Kim Dok-jaa declared that the conditions had been met and that he was already standing on the threshold of a new era. The shock on Bio's face turned to panic as he realized that Kim Dok-jaa was right, and now he had no choice but to obey. Above the raging waves, illuminated by golden light, Kim Dok-jaa solemnly announced that the new channel was about to launch, heralding the beginning of change. And at that very moment, the air was pierced by the cry of Bio, a new scenario has been launched, echoing across the dimensions, foreshadowing a storm. Kim Dok-jaa's eyes reflected the myriad symbols pulsating on the holographic screens, but his face remained impassive, as if he had seen it all before. Somewhere in the distance, under the thickness of the water, traces of the old world remained, evidence of the trials past, and a voice from oblivion exclaimed, "Well, thunder strike me." Bio frantically tried to calm the outraged constellations, assuring them that the broadcast was interrupted due to a technical error, but his words sounded unconvincing. While Bio, frightened and making excuses, swore that he had nothing to do with the interference, Kim Dok-jaa calmly studied the store, trying to find the functions he needed. Kim Dok-jaa, with a slight reproach, reminded that a true streamer always takes his vow seriously, and, threatening Bio, forced him to open the coveted shop. And while Bio, in tears, tried to appease the lords of the constellations, Kim Dok-jaa, without wasting a second, forced him to tell him where the search button was in this space store. Before Kim Dok-jaa's eyes, a vast assortment unfolded, each item calculated for both humans and Tokaibi, and he knew that he would only need 2 requests. While Bio was speechless at his audacity, Kim Dok-jaa, unperturbed, calmly typed in the search engine, "Ancient Dragon, preparing for the next step." Kim Dok-jaa, without blinking an eye, reveals his secret to Bio. Not a secret at all, just a lucky guess, because Heart of the Ancient Dragon is a name that appears all the time in games. And while Bio scratches his head in confusion, Kim Dok-jaa realizes with slight regret that the sponsor has already managed to hand over this powerful artifact to a lucky person located somewhere in Italy. Without wasting a second, Kim Dok-jaa continues his search, naming the mysterious artifacts the Eye of the Great Demon, then the Pure Star. The ominous, pulsating walls of a living labyrinth surround them as a voiceover asks with a chuckle, "And after all this trouble, you buy?" Kim Dok-jaa, ignoring Bio's bewilderment, holds a bundle of sharp stone boar thorns and several pouches in his hands, as if they were the most valuable treasures. Even when Bio anxiously reminds him of the irrecoverability of his expenses, Kim Dok-jaa only nods calmly, and somewhere in the sky, the constellation Hidden Scheme listens to his mysterious plans. With a slight, almost cheeky smile, Kim Dok-jaa closes the chat window, as if to say, "If you don't like it, don't look." BI7623's channel suddenly closes, leaving BI7623's Bihyu furious and Kim Dok-jaa continuing his journey into the belly of the beast. He turns to Bio, reminding him that their deal is not yet complete, that he has not yet accepted the offer. The terms will only be discussed after he completes this deadly scenario, putting an end to this dispute. "Well then, go," says Kim Dok Jaa with a sly smile, while an enraged Biyo calls him an insolent upstart. And then the channel opens again, and a blinding light bursts out from Kim Dokjh's wound, foreshadowing that history will still be on his side. He wipes the sweat from his forehead, his eyes are tired, but his determination remains. Kim Dokja's gaze falls on the clock, counting down the last minutes before the monster's body begins to secrete gastric juice. He presses himself against the cold edge of the stream, carefully studying the churning waters that flow through the twists of organic flesh. His hands, as if in a ritual, extract something dark and writhing from the bag. Without hesitation, he plunges the sharp thorn straight into his palm, preparing for the unknown. Now he stands, clutching the thorn, his gaze turned back to those left behind, to their inevitable fate. The monster's internal walls begin to pulsate and contract, foreshadowing its inevitable plunge into the abyss. And then a stream of digestive juice falls upon him, and a piercing cry hangs in the air. It has begun. Despite the horror, an unbending determination flashes in his eyes. He will survive, no matter what. And his body, obeying his will, makes a desperate leap, challenging death itself. But the reality of his struggle dissolves into space, where celestial bodies fall like the tears of a doomed world. Beyond this inner nightmare, war rages, and in the burning city, the Hol Arizon demon awakens from its slumber. His eyes, glowing with crimson light, scan the horizon, and a deafening roar erupts from his mouth. The monster's mouth gapes, open like a bottomless abyss, threatening to swallow up all that exists. In the depths of his body, a whirlpool is formed, into which everything that was thrown to be eaten is sucked in. Kim Dok Jaa flounders in the streams of acrid juice, his body pierced by pain, and his hands vainly try to cling to salvation. The merciless waves drag him deeper and deeper, further from the light, into the dead embrace of the monster's inner world. Every cell in his being screams in horror and disgust, but he grits his teeth, refusing to give in. The body bends under the pressure, the muscles tear, but Kim Dokjha seems to cling to life even in this agonizing state. He is carried through the pulsating insides, where every fold of mucous membrane threatens to become his last refuge. Greenish slime and crimson walls create a surreal picture of absolute decay. And suddenly, through the veil of pain, a breath of relief and shock is heard. He stood firm, enduring the first onslaught, finding temporary refuge among the terrifying depths. The monster's insides seem to come alive, passing electric discharges through themselves, but he breathes. He is alive. Exhausted but alive, King Dok Jaa falls to the surface, barely containing his trembling. He looks up, and the shock of what he has experienced is visible in his eyes. A flood of messages from the constellations confirms his incredible tenacity, and admiring observers shower him with awards for his desperate struggle. Tarnished, wounded, he remains unshakable, his spirit unbroken despite the torment he has endured. Kim Dok Jaa, covered in mud, is surprised by his own resourcefulness, admitting that even he did not expect such an unconventional tactic. But the triumph is short-lived. He is thrown back by a powerful push, and Kim Dok Jha falls into an unknown abyss, and Bairyu watches in fear. System messages flash, announcing the completion of a secret scenario, and showering the hero with untold coins and achievements for his desperate struggle. Lying on the ground, exhausted but with a slight smile on his lips, King Dokjaa breathes heavily, realizing the cost and greatness of his victory. Beside him, Bi-7623 seems to have anticipated his cunning plan, while Seal Constellations chuckle contentedly, appreciating his extraordinary tactics. Kim Dok Jaa holds a sack of hammerhead seahorse mucus in his hands, his gaze full of determination, because it was this discovery that saved his life. He remembers how, before the monster could swallow him whole, he covered himself in the remains of this strange substance. And then, at his most desperate moment, he drank the concentrate from the ichthyosaur's body, feeling the beast's strength flow into him, increasing his endurance. He explains to Bairai that it was the mass predation of ichthyosaurs that forced hammerhead seahorses to evolve, giving them immunity to stomach acid. With a slight sigh, Kim Dokjaa admits that it was scary and painful, but the result was worth it, while Bairyu just turns away in displeasure. He addresses the constellations, emphasizing that his actions were impressive, expecting their approval. As if in response, he strikes the ground with a powerful blow of the shaft, breaking through the hardened layers and opening the way further. A magical light pours out from the resulting crack, heralding a new discovery as Kim Dokjaa and Bairyu peer into the abyss. And now, before them appears the Eichthyoser heart, an artifact pulsating with ancient power hidden in the depths of the monster. Bihen Bi 7623 demands that the heart be immediately put up for auction by the Tokaibi, offering to exchange it only for a certain broken faith, which sounds ominous. Kim Dok Jaa speaks thoughtfully of ownership, while Bairyu becomes restless, realizing that his master sees this as more than just a transaction. Bihen Bi 7623, with a sinister smile, offers the constellations to watch a small advertisement before the next scenario, hinting at his power over the airwaves. Kim Dok Jaa, lost in thought, realizes that even his unusual actions are beginning to arouse the interest of observers and give him confidence. With a serious face, Kim Dok Jaa begins to sign the contract, but something important escapes his attention, arousing suspicion. He realizes that the Tokaibi contract requires a soul pledge, and his face contorts in horror at this treacherous price, while Bihen Bi 7623 grins contentedly. Kim Dok Jaa refuses the unfavorable terms of Biishiyun Bi 7623, who offers to split future donations 50-50. Tokevi seemed genuinely perplexed, considering his proposal to be quite ordinary for the business world. However, Kim Dok Jaa remained steadfast as the co-stars continued to shower Bi Hai Young D, Pri Phi, XEV E623 with donations, clearly enjoying his broadcast. With composure, Kim Dok Jaa explains his uniqueness as an incarnation without a sponsor, knowing that the co-stars pay Bii Haiyang WBI 7623 huge commissions for each of his broadcasts. Inside Bii Henabi 7623, rage boiled from such accusations because he felt that he was already being fleeced. But Kim Dok Jha did not back down, putting forward his uncompromising conditions: 100% of the donations to him, 0 to the Tokaibi. The enraged Bihyun Bi 7623 exploded with insolence, while Kim Dok Jaa, with a sly smile, declared that not a single coin would go to the Dokaibi except for the commissions already received. Tokaibi couldn't believe his ears. This impudence was beyond belief. Time was running out, the broadcast was coming to an end, and the patience of the stars, accustomed to spectacles, was running out, which only added fuel to the fire. The constellations expressed their dissatisfaction with the prolonged advertisement, and the poor embodiment of Tokaibi rolled on the floor in despair. In the end, Kim Doko Jha gave in, but immediately added that there was one more condition, which again irritated the Tokaibi. With a sly smile, Kim Doke Jha demanded a deposit of 5,000 coins, claiming that it was his guarantee. Meanwhile, the world outside this deal lived its own life, and the sea dragon slumbered peacefully in the depths. Kim Dok Jaa suddenly emerged from the water, exhaling loudly, as if he had just escaped from a long captivity. He slowly made his way to the shore, each step a struggle. 4 days underwater exhausted him, but recalling the story of Iu Jun Hyuk, Kim Doke Jha admitted that he had coped even faster, and a Tokabai nearby, already having come to his senses, demanded his share, mentally calculating the profit and rejoicing that things were going uphill. For Kim Doke Jha, who had never made a contract in his normal life, this phenomenon status was a funny twist of fate, and meanwhile, his unique skill, Fourth Wall, was activated again. But the frequent appearance of the Fourth Wall began to raise suspicions that it was a system error. Because the characteristics window did not open, Kim Dok Jha realized that the Tokaibi Bihyung Pi 7623 was trying to interfere with his system to hide something important, despite the contract signed and the guarantee received. Under this protection, the Tokaibi Bihen Bi 7623 himself looked powerless, unable to overcome the insurmountable obstacle. Kim Dok Jaa, wounded but unwavering, was aware of his uniqueness, realizing that no one, not even a Tokaibi, could open his characteristic window, and this gave him an advantage. Every step, every breath in this new world felt like entering an unknown reality. And here it is, the entrance to the second main scenario, which foretells even more severe trials than all that have come before. But the script greeted him not with a welcome, but with a warning. The earth was poisoned, and every second counted to reach the subway. Inhaling the toxic fog, he felt the world around him shrink, but his will to survive only grew stronger, driven by the sharp pain. The abandoned city, painted in the disturbing shades of the sunset, seemed to be waiting with bated breath for its new owner. Every alley bore silent witness to the disaster. Every corner was shrouded in mortal danger. An inexorable roar echoed through the streets, heralding the appearance of ancient horrors emerging from the earth. and giant predators, born of the New World, were already looking for their prey, hovering over the destroyed buildings. The streets became an arena for monstrous battles, where the strongest survived and the weak faced death. Amidst this chaos, even an ordinary store became a refuge full of despair and illusory hopes. Kim Dok, JAA hastily collected everything that could be useful, every crumb, every resource that could prolong life. With each passing moment, he became more and more practical, turning into a true survivor in this harsh world. Having stocked up on the necessary things, KAM, Doke, JAA moved on, knowing that time was running out and every second counted. He held the Zlane monkey legs, his only defense against the deadly fog, in his mouth, knowing its effects were limited. And then, through the whisper of the dying city, he caught a sound that made his heart stop in surprise. A cry for help, weak, almost inaudible, pierced the silence like a ghostly echo. He turned, his gaze full of wariness sliding around the empty store, searching for the source of the sound. Among the dead streets, at his feet lay a living creature, Xin Yusan, the last reminder of humanity in this dying world. A faint whisper of pleading escaped from beneath Xin Yusan's mask, her gaze clinging to the salvation she was waiting for. Kim Dok Jia steps, quick and determined, tore through the silence, leaving behind only echoes of despair and bloodstains. He carried her on his back like precious cargo, rushing past lifeless bodies, the remains of a world that had collapsed in an instant. Pieces of information flashed through his mind. The Oksu ground station had been destroyed, and the only chance for salvation lay further underground. Their path lay towards Jimho Station, the last hope, the last refuge in this chaos. But even this hope proved illusory. The entrance to the metro was sealed, as if fate itself was mocking their desire to survive. Kim Do-K Jaa breathed heavily, feeling his strength leaving him, but he couldn't give up. There was only one side left. He gritted his teeth, activating the mysterious artifact again, feeling its energy spread throughout his body, adding determination. The fourth exit from Jimho Station, deserted, drenched in gray rain, it looked as hopeless as all the others. But inside, life was glimmering. A few survivors desperately tried to hold on to the massive grate that was slowly descending, threatening to cut them off from the outside world. The sound of the door falling drowned out their screams, inexorably cutting off the light, leaving only darkness and horror. Only a thin gap remained between the world of the living and the abyss, beckoning with its hopelessness. "What the hell?" came a frightened whisper as the door closed, seemingly for good. "Open the door!" one of the survivors roared, his voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. But from behind the bars came only cries of refusal, accusations and threats, human nature laid bare in the face of the end of the world. Kim Dok Jaa swallowed the bright stone, his eyes flashing with determination, and the world around him seemed to slow down. With inhuman strength, he pushed against the metal bars, and the steel groaned under his pressure. The screeching of metal rent the air, and the frightened cries from within merged into one common groan of horror. The door gave way, opening a passage, but instead of greeting, people rushed in panic away from the strange savior. As Kim Do-K Jaa entered, he hugged Sin-Yu-Sun, and at that moment the system announced, "You have entered the safe zone," but true safety was only an illusion. Among the rubble of the post-apocalyptic world, even the most ordinary things acquired the status of treasure. Kim Dok Jaa, leaning over Yosaang, offered her his last hope, trying to at least neutralize the poison. Thoughts of a future where this woman should not have been flashed through his head, and her presence disrupted the usual course of events. At that moment, a flash of insight flashed in Kim Do-K's eyes, a piece of information that could change everything. But the time for reflection disappeared when new faces emerged from the darkness, their shadows falling on the heroes like harbingers of a new threat. The approaching footsteps echoed in the eerie silence, every sound a promise of an inevitable collision. The leader of this group, radiating self-confidence and disdain, unceremoniously demanded an explanation. Kim Do-K Jha glanced at the insolent people with slight annoyance, and in the supramundane spheres, even the constellations expressed their displeasure. He briefly stated his name, and this simple combination of sounds caused confusion among the uninvited guests. Irritation quickly gave way to rage. "Who are you to answer me?" the leader's voice thundered as one of his henchmen recognized the lying woman. The truth about Yosaang that came to light only deepened their suspicions, and questions began to rain down. The faces of the two most aggressive men showed a look of glee, foreshadowing cruel intentions. A cynical smile spread across the leader's face when he realized that Kim Do-K Jaa and Yoosash had dared to act without his knowledge. While Kim Dok Jaa was trying to connect the names with the story he knew, voices behind him began to whisper predatorily about the first act of the upcoming drama. He understood perfectly well that in conditions of chaos, even the most banal greed could become deadly, and the bandits' gaze fell on their supplies. The leader, with a mad gleam in his eyes, demanded that they give up everything, offering in exchange only the preservation of lives, which sounded like a mockery. Deep down, Kim Dokjae knew the banality of evil, but that didn't make it any less threatening, and even the constellations, watching, became angry. Suddenly, the system message about creating a new scenario sounded like a death sentence, and Kim Dokjae clutched the pipe in his hand, realizing that there was no more choice. Standing before the bandits, he knew that the fate of one of them would be decided here and now, under the watchful gaze of the ancient constellations. With each passing second, the tension grew, and in Kim Dokjae's hands, a force flared up, ready to break the shackles and fight back. Amid the jubilant minions, an ominous system message appeared, announcing a new, bonus scenario, interference elimination, with 5 minutes to neutralize obstacles. To the side, locked and helpless, sat Yusanh, her eyes full of horror and despair. A fist whistled through the air, and every movement of Panchul Su was filled with malice and ruthlessness. But Kim Dokjae dodged with grace, sending his opponent flying into the air like a rag doll, to the surprise of his accomplices. The bandits fell to the floor in bewilderment, unable to understand how this guy had remained unharmed, while Kim Dokjae's inner voice explained that the colossal difference in characteristics determined the outcome of the fight. Astonished by their leadership, they realized that Kim Dokjae was aiming for their vulnerable spots, completely paralyzing their movements. Even the gang leader, confident in his sponsor, felt an icy chill of fear as the improvised blade was raised above him. Information about Panchul Su flashed through Kim Dokjae's mind, revealing his true nature, a common gangster whose sponsor, the owner of the dirty scumbags, only gave him the illusion of power. Kim Dokjae, leaning over him, said the name Chul-su from Cheoldu, and a memory flashed through his head. According to the plot, Yoo-jun Hyuk was supposed to kill this bandit. Why is he still alive? Kim Dokjae wondered, while the bandit, underestimating the situation, compared him to himself, accusing him of murder. Panchul Su's words about similarity caused a storm of emotions in Kim Dokjae, reflected in his wide-open eyes. A flash of consciousness, and Kim Dokjae sees himself torn apart in a black-and-white whirlwind of other people's suffering. It was a phantom response to his mind-reading ability, plunging him into the abyss of other people's nightmares and sins. And then the insane image of Kim Nam Yuen, the mad demon, appeared before him, accusing him of secretly wanting to watch others suffer. The bloody marks on Panchul Su's hand were a reminder of the brutality of the moment, interrupting his internal dialogue. Kim Dokjae's brutal blow cut off the bandit's attempts to resist, and the inscription in the system confirmed that the owner of the inveterate scum was enjoying this spectacle. The constellation Bangchul Su, the master of the dirty bastards, was known for his ruthlessness towards his own incarnations, and Kim Dokjae decided to use this to his advantage. He understood that the sponsor, Panchul Su, was a masochist who enjoyed the suffering of his charges, and Kim Dokjae decided to give him a show. The bandits' desperate pleas for mercy for Hyungnim rang out in the air, but Kim Dokjae, looking at the tied-up Yusanh, remained adamant. Yusanh's suffering, silent but piercing, was the last straw, confirming Kim Dokjae in his resolve. At that moment, like a fury of vengeance, Jung Hae-won unleashed a barrage of blows on the bandit leader, his screams drowned out by the chaos. While the leader, rumpled but still arrogant, raised his eyes with difficulty, his henchmen froze in horror, sensing something bad was about to happen. The leader's insidious plan, developed without anyone's consent, came to the surface, revealing his true nature. Kim Dokjae's furious whisper, full of unspoken pain, pierced the air. "Why had you do this?" In his cloudy, blood-clouded gaze, Kim Dokjae read not only a challenge, but also a shadow of desperate understanding. "Just kill me," the leader croaked, his words echoing the ancient truth that in this world every man is a wolf to every other. But in the eyes of Kim Dokjae, this was not just a survival instinct, but a deep despair that permeated the soul of the leader long before the end of the world. This despair echoed in Kim Dokjae's memories, illuminating a childlike figure sitting alone in the darkness, clutching a phone. Are we alike? The leader's question echoed, and Kim Dokjha wondered if he saw in this man only a distorted reflection of himself. The bandits' screams, full of horror and bewilderment, rang out over the lifeless body of their leader, and the Constellation reward flashed in the system message. Without wasting a second, Kim Dokjha lifted Yoosang H onto his back, feeling her fragile body and her trust. His voice, commanding and decisive, sounded like an order. Take me to your group. On the Metro map, the lifeline of the Koldai group intersected with the red line of the Kim Dokjha route. Jumho Station became their next, inevitable destination. The exit to Jumho met them with silence and shock from the survivors, who looked at Kim Dokjha with frightened bewilderment. The steps led to new trials. The Koldai group, battered by the fighting, needed help, and the cries of the wounded rent the air. Kim Doc. Ja's gaze slid over the faces of the survivors, their suffering touching him deeply despite what he had been through. Suddenly, a cry of delight and relief pierced the crowd. Oh my God, it's Kim Dokjha. Her heart began to beat faster as Sunzi Eli rushed forward, forgetting about fear and danger, to meet her savior. Her embrace was full of genuine joy. Words of gratitude and relief mingled with the greetings of others who recognized him as a leader. Chung In-ho tried to express remorse, but Kim Dokjha only shrugged, realizing that there was no escape from that situation. Shin Yu-sung let out a sigh of relief as he mentioned that Yoo Junyuk had predicted his survival, filling the moment with a sense of foreboding. Kim Dokjha, seizing on the name of Iu Junhyu, hastened to find out his whereabouts, but the answer only confirmed his absence from Jumho Station. The silhouette in a fluttering cloak dissolved into the dark depths of the tunnel, taking with it mystery and incompleteness. In Kim Dokjha's mind, a picture emerged. The survivors of Cheoldu, who were supposed to fall at the hands of Yuju and Hyu, remained alive. He, Yoo Junhyu, a regressor living the same life again, turned out to be something bigger, an all-consuming monster in this circle. A monster that was forced to move forward without looking back, leaving behind only the echo of its steps in an eternal pursuit of its goal. Yusung, noticing his strange behavior, worriedly asked if he was okay before her angry shout caused the crowd to part. The footsteps multiplied. The sounds of approaching threat grew louder as armed figures began to emerge from the shadows. The crowd, bristling with homemade weapons, advanced, and a dark premonition was frozen in the eyes of Kim Dokjha and his companions. A cry of alarm, a silent shock ran across their faces as the realization of danger dawned on them. And there he was, Chung In-ho, pointing his finger. His angry cry of, "You," sounded like a sentence, making hearts stop. The footage faded, taking us back a few days to a world of chaos where Chung In-ho saved a woman from certain death. "Drive out this horrible fellow," his words echoed in the past when, full of disgust, he demanded his expulsion. But Kim Dokjha, placing his hand on his shoulder, reminded him of the fragile alliance of survivors, of the need to stick together. Kim Dokjha introduced himself. His tone was polite, but Chung In-ho, surrounded by his men, did not hide his mistrust. Chung In-ho's smile was cold, his gaze piercing as he said his name, as if challenging. While one of the thugs was handing the bags to Kim Dokjha, a thought flashed through the latter's mind. This name, Kim Dokjha, had been heard before. Realization dawned. Kim Dokjha wasn't just a survivor. He had a sponsor, and perhaps he was the true leader of this place. And then came the words that struck Kim Dokjha to the depths of his soul. "You fought monsters to save us," revealing his secret feat. The crowd perked up when the announcement was made. A new man had arrived, and with him came hope, food to survive. But on the face of one of them there was a predatory, impatient grin. The word "food" sounded like a hunger cry. Gon Pil-du pushed his way through the crowd, his gaze full of false cordiality, and the baseball bat in his hand spoke of a hidden threat. Kim Dokjha, watching this circus of hypocrisy, only grinned, and somewhere in the heights one could feel the excitement of a hidden intrigue. At Jumho Station, as the silent sign said, 87 souls had gathered, but this number alone did not say much. The number was lower than Kim Dokjha had expected, and he understood that only those who were near the station at the time of the disaster had survived. The bitter truth struck him. To get through the first scenario, almost everyone here had to step over someone else's life. "Everyone here is a murderer," he said heavily, pointing to the station's unspoken division into the core group and the outsiders. While Jeong Pil-du cynically manipulated the crowd with promises of salvation, the mother hugged her child, whispering words of coming help that might not come. Gung Pildu, surrounded by his henchmen, projected false confidence, promising them a way out, while Kim Do-kei Jha merely watched the spectacle attentively. The meager food supplies were running low, and the main group sent people to the surface to certain death in search of food. As Yusa Ender, companion, discussed the details, it became clear that the woman he had saved, Jung He-1, was one of those sent on the deadly expedition. Her face darkened as she explained that many had gone out to get provisions, but only Chung He-1, by chance or fate, had managed to return. Kim Doc Jaa addressed Leeym Ah-sung, hinting that he understood why he refused to join the dominant faction, despite the obvious advantages. Lee Henson, standing firmly on his feet, admitted that his choice was simple. He simply felt that this was what he had to do. "I know little of morality," he said, but something inside, something primordial, told him that it would be wrong to join them. Silently, Kim Doke Ja extended his hand, squeezing Lee Henson's shoulder, a gesture of understanding and support in a world where sincerity had become a luxury. "Duplicity is not a vice," said Kim Doke Jaa, and Lee Hyun-soon, taken aback by this unexpected confession, heard his name spoken with true respect. At this moment, Jeolongchi Pildu and his retinue seemed to freeze, their faces reflecting a mixture of confusion and irritation at this unexpected connection. It was as if an invisible line had divided the space. Kim Doke, Jaa and Lee Hyun-soon, standing side by side, were no longer just survivors. They were becoming something more. Kim Doc Jaa, lost in his thoughts, makes a decision that will change the course of their journey, or at least suggest a new path. With a sly smile, as if anticipating the reaction, he says words that will forever bind their destinies. But Chung In-ho's offer, although tempting, a high position and joint management, does not meet the expected response, and a bold challenge hangs in the air. Chung In-oh only smirks, as if assessing the strength of spirit before him, his face lit up with cold self-confidence. He continues to press, reminding him of Kim Do-kei Jae's heroic status and duty as a savior. But the hero seems not to succumb to these manipulations, his thoughts far from high-flown speeches. And then Chung In-ho turns his attention to the most vulnerable, to the cry of a hungry child, trying to play on the compassion of Yo-sa Seng, Ade, and the others. The eyes of the crowd, full of hope and despair, are fixed on Kim Do-kei Jaa, who is now becoming the center of others' ambitions and manipulations. But there is not the slightest pity in his gaze, only cold calculation and detachment from the suffering of others. Where does this path lead? To salvation or to a trap? Only time will tell what lies behind the signs beckoning to the exit. Lee Henson is worried, doubting the wisdom of refusing, but Kim Do-kei Jaa only smirks, as if asking him to answer the question himself. As he leaves, Chung In-ho utters his final words, full of hidden threat, but Kim Doke Jaa does not doubt his choice, mentally rejecting their offer. He exchanges words with Lee Henson, demonstrating calm and confidence, and then, as if remembering, offers everyone food, showing concern for his small group. Trembling hands reach for food, because hunger is the most terrible enemy in this new, cruel world. Kim Doc Jaa calmly distributes meager supplies, creating a small island of stability and hope around himself in the gathering darkness. But this fragile peace is being closely watched, and the anger of Chung In-ho and his men is growing with each passing second, foreshadowing a storm. Accusations rain down like hail, their words saturated with envy and malice, turning into open aggression. The crowd, incited by the leaders, demands its share, forgetting about salvation and justice, seeing only food in the hands of those who dared to be independent. A sudden, chilling fear pierces someone's soul, reflecting the horror of an impending threat. The aggression is escalating, and amidst the chaos, only Chung In-oh remains calm, watching the events unfold with a detached smirk. Lee Henson recognizes the enemy, and Kim Do-kei Jaa realizes that he is facing not just a gang, but a manipulator who feeds his power on the desperation of these people. A sinister grin spreads across Chung In-oh's face, foreshadowing something bad. He appears before Kim Doke Jaa, not hiding his cunning, and his aura puts pressure on everyone around him. Recognition flashes in Kim Doke Jaa's eyes as he realizes who exactly he is dealing with. Chung In-ho skillfully manipulates the crowd, igniting their anger against Kim Do-kei Jaa, turning them into his puppets. With a devilish glint in his eyes, Chung In-ho internally rejoices, knowing how easy it is to control the desperate. The fake smile on his face promises a false peace, trying to convince Lee Yun Sung that Kim Do-K Jaa has already become his pawn. Deep down, he feels triumphant as the grip around Kim Do-K Jha tightens, leaving him with no choice. Surrounded by desperate faces, Kim Do-K Jaa and his comrades realize their vulnerable position. Jung In-ho continues his game, promising food, but his smile foreshadows new, harsh conditions. And his words, like the blow of a whip, pierce the air. No one gets anything for free, not even life. Kim Dok Jaa watches intently as it unfolds, realizing that this is not just a trade, but a new, cruel game. Jung In, Ho, without a trace of remorse, declares that he has no intention of being a benefactor and does not trust these people. Standing in the center of the group, he announces his currency, coins, the only thing that matters in this new world. There is growing outrage, the price seems exorbitant, and people are asking whether it was worth trusting Kim Do-K Jaa. Kim Do-K Jaa, however, shows unexpected generosity by offering food to the family for free, but only as an exception. He insists on calculation, emphasizing his principles, despite the discontent of others. Jung Hee-won's gaze mixes surprise with growing respect for his unwavering will. Jung Hee-won introduces herself, sincerely thanking Kim Do-K Jhs for saving her this morning, laying the foundation for a future alliance. She abruptly cuts off those who try to take advantage of the situation, reminding them of the value of every crumb obtained. The reaction of others to Jung Hee-won's words is a mixture of shame and awareness of the harsh reality of the new world. Kim Do-K Jaa, as if trying to soften the tension, offers to pay for the food, restoring the delicate balance between duty and mercy. Like a teacher in a brave new world, he demonstrates the mechanics of exchange, revealing hidden aspects of survival. The magic of the new rules manifests itself in the touch, where mental intention turns into a real transaction and coins change hands. But young Lee Guyan, with childish naivety, exceeds the required amount, explaining that it is the price for his daily chocolate bar. Kim Do-K Jaa, seeing this act of innocence, only smirks, noting that even a child sometimes behaves more noble than many adults. Meanwhile, Jung Hee-won, with a predatory glint in her eyes, warns about tomorrow, about vigilance and the price of recklessness. Other survivors gather around, their voices filled with bitterness and disillusionment with a system that turns people into cattle for intelligence. They try to bargain, citing previous privileges and asking for a lower price, not understanding the true value that Kim Do-K Jha puts into the supplies. Under the cover of night, the city waited with bated breath, like a harbinger of a new, cruel game. The exhausted survivors sought a brief moment of peace, while others remained on guard, their faces reflecting eternal fatigue and anxiety. Kim Do-K Jaa offers a break, but his interlocutor refuses, emphasizing the endless series of tasks in this ruthless world. Their short dialogue is filled with hidden tension, as if unspoken words weigh on their souls. And now, dawn once again colors the skies above the city, but the world they knew has changed forever. A sudden shock crosses Jung Hee-won's face, foreshadowing something unexpected that is about to fall upon their fragile world. She is outraged to discover that all the supplies have been sold out, and Kim Do-K Jha, watching her, is filled with respect for her unbroken spirit. The true nature of what was happening is revealed. The buyers were not only those considered alienated. At this point, a new leader appears, announcing a catastrophic reduction in rations, only 3 cookies per person, causing panic and bewilderment. He, with a sly grin, offers to join the reconnaissance, promising more provisions, which causes indignation and suspicion. The crowd erupts in rage, accusing him of wanting them dead, to which the leader cynically suggests that they get their own food. And, seeing their confusion, he hints at another path with a sly smile, leaving behind a trail of intrigue and false hopes. Yesterday, Kim Dok-ja made something very unpleasant known. He sold half of his stock to the main group. Of course, by paying the appropriate amount for them, which, in the leader's opinion, was the worst choice. Activating the skill, Instigation, Cheon. In-ho smugly declares that this is just justice. The eyes of the crowd, heated by the words of others, turn to Kim Duk-ju, filled with accusations and anger. "So it's because of that bastard," the crowd murmurs, and Kim Da-ja realizes that people under the influence of the instigation skill are unable to think clearly. Jung Hee-won, not hiding her irritation, accuses him of allowing the main group to seize all the supplies again. He admits that he wanted people to wake up on their own, but Jung Hee-won rightly points out, the situation hasn't changed. However, Kim Dokja only grins, saying that he got something much more valuable for it, 1,450 coins. How can we trust him? Young Hee-won exclaims, while Yu Seng only smiles tenderly, saying that she believes in his plan. And Dokja, with a mysterious smile, replies that he sold absolutely everything, without leaving a crumb for himself. Jung Hee-won looks at Yu Sang with confusion, trying to understand how she can trust this madman, while Kim Deokja takes out the last chocolate stick from his pocket. And he offers it to someone invisible, as if testing the patience of his companions. It's Lee Gil-yeon, and Kim Dokja, stroking his head, gives him the treat, refusing her share. He then turns to the group, urging them to finish off all the supplies left over from the previous night. It would be best if you could get your supplies done by the end of the day, he says, ignoring the crowd's disgruntled murmurs about the prices and the inability to obtain coins. The next station, Jumho, greets them with a silent sigh. And so Kim Dokja stands alone on the tracks, his figure barely visible in the ghostly light, peering into the misty distance. He recalls how many died in these dungeons, bandits, and those who simply couldn't cope. Jung Hee-won asks if he's going to go there, into the unknown, where the shadows go. And then, changing the subject, she thoughtfully asks if she ever thanked him for everything. He tells her that it seems he will have to repeat what he did once. One of those who recently barely survived brazenly claims that someone else, a limping man, attacked him yesterday. Rage flares in Jung Hee-won's eyes, and she vows to personally put an end to the one who dared to hurt the weak. Her gaze, full of determination and pain, pierces the air, foreshadowing a storm. She cannot come to terms with the fact that these scoundrels are dragging not only the young, but also the elderly into this nightmare. Her anger collides with a harsh reality. People are hungry, and desperation drives them to acts worthy only of monsters. Kim Deokja, as if reading an invisible book, explains to her the concept of attributes capable of hyper-evolution until Jung Hee-won understands his passivity. She indignantly demands to know why he is so calm while chaos unfolds around him, and Kim Dokja continues to immerse her in the secrets of hidden attributes. He explains that simple intervention will not solve the problem, which will repeat itself over and over again as long as people starve, and considers Jung Hee-won as a possible companion. He sees how easily her righteous anger can turn into uncontrollable madness, and names the root of all evil, hunger. Jung Hee-won finally understands his logic. All that's needed is to eliminate the source of the problem, and Kim Dokja is already expecting something else. Golden lightning pierces the air around Kim Dokja as he stares at the screen, anticipating someone's imminent appearance. And then it happens. A sharp discharge of energy, panic, screams, and people realize in horror Tokiebi has returned. Barryu, with a sly grin, turns to the trembling people, asking if they missed him. He nonchalantly reports that his predecessor was disciplined, and now it is he, Barryu, who is taking responsibility for this scenario. A cute-looking creature, surrounded by flashes of golden energy, smiles contentedly, enjoying the moment. However, inside Barryu, discontent is seething. He does not understand the people's calm and complains about the excessive complexity imposed by Bichen. Glowing objects, canned goods and energy bars begin to fall from the sky, causing people to look around in confusion. Barryu grins, warning that when the game starts, these brats had better start thinking about winning. His true nature shines through his grin as he calls them nothing less than despicable, earthly rabble. An ominous downpour of black drops falls from above, trapping everyone in the game that has begun. And at this moment, when horror grips the crowd, an ominous anticipation of the inevitable fun hangs over them. But while others are in a panic, Kim Dokja faces the new challenge with unflappable calm, surrounded by the flickering interfaces of the system. A light, almost predatory smile plays on his face, revealing not only his acceptance of fate, but also his readiness to control it. Amidst the chaos, Cheon In-ho, as if trying to maintain some remnants of order, gathers the survivors, announcing some important announcement. His words hit home. The shortage in the reconnaissance detachment means that those who refuse to join will be deprived of vital supplies. A wave of indignation erupts as a system message confirms Cheon In-ho's words, announcing the immediate rationing and destruction of all food supplies. Amidst the general panic, Yu Sang-ah laments the loss of supplies, and someone near Dok Joy, struck by his calm, begins to suspect something is wrong. Kim Deokji's gaze is piercing, as if he can read the minds of those around him, and the system confirms his intuition regarding Cheon In-ho is impeccable. He explains to Yu Sang-ah that he foresaw this food penalty, not because he knew, but because Tokaibi never miss an opportunity to play with humans. Yu Sang-ah seems alarmed by his insight, and her voice hangs in the air, full of worry. The other survivors are wondering what to do next, join a reconnaissance squad or seek other salvation, but Kim Dokja already has his own plan. The realization of a harsh reality hits them. To survive, they'll have to adapt to a new world where even food has become part of a dangerous game. All eyes are on Kim Dokjae, waiting for him to show them the way in this world that has changed beyond recognition. A dark subway tunnel opens up before them, and Kim Dokja confirms what few people suspect. His words sound like both a sentence and a salvation. They will hunt monsters to survive. A mysterious abyss of rails stretches into the distance, promising unimaginable dangers and new challenges. He confidently states that they will need a team capable of achieving the script's objectives before saying goodbye. Cheon In-ho, watching Dokji's departure, is perplexed, feeling a mixture of relief and contempt, but the system already confirms Kim Dokji's understanding of the characters is growing. And so, against the backdrop of these complex interactions, the main secret is revealed. The path to power lies either through trust or through a complete understanding of others' intentions. Dokja, as if reading an open book, sees through the pretense, his inner world filled with an understanding of others' true intentions. But Cheon In-ho isn't ready to let them go so easily, offering to accompany them, which only confirms Dokji's fears. And here they are in the tunnels, where the silence oppresses the ear, and the light ahead only emphasizes the dark secret of this place. A sudden shock runs through the group, causing Han Ma-young-oh to freeze in horror. On the tracks lie not just bodies, but bloody evidence of a recent tragedy. Yu Sang-ah, terrified to the core, seeks protection, though Dokja suspects that her true fear is not only caused by monsters. Lee Hun-sung looks at Lee Gil-young doubtfully, but Kim Dokja confidently declares he is not a threat, only potential. Sun-si Lee worries about the condition of Jung Hee-won, whose strength has not yet recovered, but she brushes it off, pointing to a more important goal. Lee Goyin, lighting the way with a flashlight, senses the growing danger, not prepared to go blind. Yu Sana and Lee Han-sung exchange words as they prepare for the fight, but Deokja interrupts them, reminding them of something important. Then, Kim Deokja turns to Lee Yuan, making it clear that it is time to reveal the hidden trump card. Lee Gillen crouched down and extended his hand to the ground, and his touch awakened something mysterious, radiating a shimmering energy. A shimmering trail runs along the tunnel like an invisible thread, paving the way through the darkness. And now, by the light of the flashlight, the answer is revealed. A thin thread stretches towards the cockroach, like an invisible conductor. Lee Gullen explains that his unique attribute allows him to communicate with insects by using them as eyes and ears. He thanks you for your concern, but makes it clear that he has come not to be a burden, but to become a valuable ally. As the group moves on, Yusun Ah smells a foul odor, and Lee Han-sung concludes that there is more than just human remains hidden in the darkness. Suddenly, holograms appear around them, warning them of an approaching hidden danger. Kim Dokja sees a monster, and its appearance evokes disgust, but also the realization that this is no ordinary creature. Before them appears the Earth Rat Dog, an underground hunter, one of those who turned these tunnels into his bloody arena. Kim Dokja understands that the passages between the stations are death traps, but in his mind he already has an image of the only one who can pass through them. His comrades, Lee Hai-yun-sung and Lee Gil-yeon, try to find an easy way out, but Kim Dokja is adamant. This scenario requires their personal efforts and blood. Turning to Jung Hee-won, Kim Deokja looks for potential where others see only inexperience, but Hee-won modestly brushes off the praise. The remains of fallen monsters are transformed into raw materials that hold the chance for survival. In this new, brutal world where civilization has collapsed, they must survive, armed with primitive but deadly bones. Kim Dokji's ingenious knowledge, gleaned from a fictitious book, allows them to gain an advantage even in making weapons from improvised means. With cold calculation, Kim Dokja dictates the rules of the game. Without hiding the cruel truth, many of them will not live to see dawn, but they must at least try. A new threat stirs in the shadows of the tunnels, its clawed paws already preparing to strike. And now, from the depths they crawl out, a whole horde of Earth Radogs, their predatory eyes glowing with green fire, heralding the beginning of a new slaughter. The first blows fall on Lee Henson. His body is covered in scratches and blood, but he does not retreat. With fierce determination, Lee Henson charges into battle, his homemade weapon cutting through the air, driving the monster back. The battle consumes everyone. Kim Dokja, Jung Hee-won, and the others are spinning in a whirlwind of despair and steel, every blow a chance to live. Jung Hee-won is confused, her blade misses, and one of the rat dogs slips past, causing a surge of alarm. Little Lee Gien, clutching his bone club, prepares his own unexpected blow. A blast of blue energy erupts from his hands, and the club crashes down on the monster, demonstrating the boy's hidden power. The bone weapon pierces the monster's flesh, and next to it, Sin Yu-sung, at the same moment, makes his own precise strike. Her blade rips through the monster's skin, and blood stains the dark walls of the tunnel. Kim Dokja surveys the battlefield, his gaze piercing and cold, surrounded by fallen bodies and silent questions. Finally, the fighting dies down, and the survivors, breathing heavily, look at each other, seeking confirmation that they all went through this hell. Jung Hee-won asks in horror about the number of victims, and Kim Dok-ja, without blinking an eye, names a number that is imprinted in everyone's hearts. 3. Lee Hyeon-sung and Jung Hee-won exchange surprised glances, trying to comprehend the scale of the carnage. Lee Henson proudly proclaims his exploits, boasting of the generosity of the constellation that patronizes him. It was the Master of Steel who bestowed upon him the unprecedented starter set, an item that aroused the envy and bewilderment of others. It might seem like a small thing, but this set provides unprecedented benefits, and Kim Dok-ja can't help but feel a little envious of his friend. Yu Sang-ah, more pragmatic, raises the issue of survival and food, and Kim Deok-ja promises to find a solution despite the lack of obvious answers. In silent anticipation, all eyes converge on him, as if he is the only one who can dispel the fog of uncertainty. But the tension in his eyes reveals that this isn't just a game for Kim Dok-ji either, and Yu Sang-ah can't resist asking the question that's been hanging in the air, "You know something, don't you?" He could avoid answering, pretending not to know, but Kim Dok-ja chooses a different path, for his knowledge is their only hope. And at that moment, a new wave of horror falls upon them. A piercing scream echoes through the corridors at the subway as the monsters attack again. One by one, the survivors find themselves trapped, their pleas for rescue dissolving into chaos as the hidden schemer silently watches their choice. Without a second thought, Yu Sang-ah rushes to help, her hand desperately reaching out to the one drowning in the abyss. But it's all in vain. The man disappears into the abyss, and the cry of Yu Sang, "Ah!" pronouncing his name, echoes in the depths, while the constellation, prisoner of the Guanyin Hoop, shakes its head in disapproval. His fall becomes an ominous omen for all who remain. Lee Hyun-sung, realizing the scale of the tragedy, extends a helping hand, but Jung Hee-won already sees new problems in his actions, sensing that this path will be thorny. And while the battle is not yet over, and the fates of the heroes hang in the balance, a vision of the future flashes for a moment, where they might be able to enjoy a well-deserved rest, remembering everything they have experienced.